Picture the silence that falls across Vatican City at 3 in the morning. The ancient stones hold their breath. Shadows dance between marble columns older than empires. In the deepest vaults beneath St. Peter's Basilica, where tourists never tread and even cardinals rarely venture, something extraordinary may rest in darkness. The air here tastes of centuries. Dust motes float like forgotten prayers in shafts of amber light filtering through stained glass windows that have witnessed the rise and fall of kings. These corridors have sheltered secrets since the days of Constantine. They have hidden the scandals of popes, the forbidden knowledge of heretics, the manuscripts that could topple governance or reshape human understanding. But what if they hide something more? What if, nestled between papal bulls and ancient theological treatises, lie documents that speak of visitors from beyond the stars? What if the Catholic Church, guardian of 2 billion souls, custodian of humanity's most sacred mysteries, holds proof that we are not alone in the universe? The Vatican moves in whispers. Information flows through channels as old and intricate as the catacombs beneath Rome itself. Cardinals speak in careful phrases. Archivists guard their treasures with devotion that borders on obsession. Nothing here happens by accident. Every word is weighed. Every revelation is calculated. Yet sometimes in the spaces between official statements, in the pauses during papal audiences, in the careful non-denials of Vatican astronomers, something else emerges. A hint, a suggestion, a door left deliberately ajar. Consider the words of Monsignor Corrado Balducci, a Vatican theologian who spent decades studying demonology and the supernatural. In interviews throughout the 1990s, he spoke with curious certainty about extraterrestrial life. These beings exist, he would say, his eyes holding the weight of knowledge. The Bible does not exclude their existence. He was no fringe theorist. He was a man who held the ear of popes, who moved in the highest circles of church hierarchy. Or consider the Vatican Observatory, perched high in the mountains of Arizona, where Jesuit priests point their telescopes toward distant galaxies and speak openly of the possibility of life among the stars. They do not speak as dreamers or science fiction enthusiasts. They speak with the careful precision of men who know more than they reveal. The Church has always been a keeper of uncomfortable truths. For centuries, it preserved Greek philosophy when barbarians burned libraries. It sheltered scientific knowledge during dark ages when learning itself was suspect. It has weathered scandals that would have destroyed lesser institutions, always adapting, always surviving, always protecting its deepest secrets. What if the greatest secret of all rests not in some government facility in the Nevada desert, but in the heart of the world's oldest continuous institution? What if the proof that humanity seeks, the evidence that we are part of a larger cosmic community, has been carefully guarded by men in scarlet robes who understand the weight of such knowledge? The Vatican does nothing without reason. When Pope Francis speaks of the vastness of God's creation, when Vatican astronomers publish papers on exoplanets and the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, when church theologians quietly debate the theological implications of life on other worlds, they are not engaging in idle speculation. They are preparing. They are conditioning. They are slowly, carefully opening a door that has been locked for centuries. In the deepest archives, where silence reigns absolute and even the dust seems to hold its breath, documents may rest that would change everything. Testimonies of encounters, records of visitations, proof that the angels described in Scripture were something far more literal than metaphor. The whisper of secrets echoes through marble halls. It speaks of knowledge too dangerous for the masses, too revolutionary for sudden revelation, too profound for casual disclosure. It suggests that the question is not whether we are alone, but whether we are ready to learn that we never were. Deep beneath the cobblestone courtyards of Vatican City, where the footsteps of pilgrims fade to memory, lies one of humanity's most formidable repositories of hidden knowledge. The Vatican Apostolic Library, stretches through corridors that seem to extend beyond the physical boundaries of the papal state itself. Here, 53 miles of shelving hold documents that span 2 millennia of human experience. But it is the adjoining Vatican Secret Archives, now diplomatically renamed the Vatican Apostolic Archives, that captures the imagination of conspiracy theorists and scholars alike. The very name whispers of forbidden knowledge. The Latin phrase archivum secretum translates not as secret in the sense of hidden, but as private, the personal papers of the papal household. Yet this linguistic nuance does little to diminish the mystique that surrounds these climate-controlled chambers. To gain access to these archives requires more than academic credentials. Scholars must petition for years. They must specify exactly which documents they wish to examine. They cannot browse freely through the collections like visitors in a public library. Instead, they request specific materials and wait while white-gloved archivists retrieve items from depths that few living souls have ever seen. The restrictions are not merely bureaucratic. They are philosophical. The Vatican operates on a timescale measured in centuries, not decades. Information is released when the Church determines that humanity is prepared to receive it. Documents remain classified for 75 years as a matter of standard policy. Some remain sealed far longer. What lies in those deeper chambers, beyond the reach of even privileged researchers? What documents rest in climate-controlled silence, waiting for a moment that may never come? Consider the scope of what is known to exist. Letters from Michelangelo, pleading for payment and describing his struggles with the Sistine Chapel ceiling. Galileo's trial records, documenting the Church's struggle with scientific revolution. The minutes of the Cadaver Synod, where Pope Stephen VI put his predecessor's corpse on trial. Documents relating to the Knights Templar, the Borgias, the Inquisition. These represent only the materials that the Vatican acknowledges. They are the public face of a collection that extends far deeper into territories of knowledge that challenge conventional understanding. Medieval manuscripts hint at encounters with beings of light. Renaissance reports describe objects in the sky that moved against the natural order. Missionary accounts from distant lands speak of indigenous peoples who claimed their ancestors came from the stars. Each document, viewed individually, might be dismissed as folklore or misinterpretation. Taken together, they suggest a pattern. The Vatican's relationship with knowledge has always been complex. It preserved classical learning through the Dark Ages, while simultaneously suppressing ideas it deemed dangerous. It funded astronomical research while condemning astronomers who contradicted religious doctrine. It collected reports of miracles and apparitions while maintaining strict criteria for what constitutes divine intervention. This same institution that cataloged every papal sneeze for 1,000 years would certainly have documented encounters with the extraordinary. If beings from other worlds had made contact, if objects from the sky had been witnessed by credible sources, if evidence existed that challenged humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos, the Vatican would have recorded it. The question is not whether such records exist. The question is what form they take and why they remain hidden. Some researchers suggest that the most sensitive materials are not stored in the traditional archives at all, but in separate facilities known only to a select few. They speak of underground chambers that extend deeper than officially acknowledged, of collections that exist outside the normal cataloging system, of documents so sensitive that their very existence is classified. Meanwhile, the Vatican continues its careful dance of revelation and concealment. It opens portions of its archives with great fanfare while keeping other sections sealed. It allows researchers to examine materials from centuries past while restricting access to more recent documents. It presents itself as transparent while maintaining levels of secrecy that would make intelligence agencies envious. In this fortress of knowledge, where every scrap of paper is preserved with religious devotion, where nothing is ever truly destroyed, where the accumulation of 2,000 years of human experience rests in climate-controlled silence, The most extraordinary secrets may hide in plain sight. They wait, perhaps, for a generation ready to receive them, or for a moment when their revelation serves the Church's larger purpose. The Scriptures speak in the language of their time, describing the indescribable through metaphors that ancient minds could comprehend. When prophets encountered the divine, they reached for familiar concepts to capture experiences that transcended human understanding. Fiery chariots became their vehicles of choice. Beings of light took on wings and halos. The cosmos itself was reduced to a dome of hammered bronze, studded with points of light. But what if these ancient witnesses were describing something far more literal than theology suggests? Consider Ezekiel's famous vision by the river Sheber. The prophet describes wheels within wheels, covered with eyes, moving in impossible directions. He speaks of beings with 4 faces: human, lion, ox, and eagle, creatures that sparkled like burnished bronze and moved like lightning. Above them stretched something like a crystal firmament, and above that, a throne occupied by a figure whose appearance was like that of a man, but surrounded by fire and brilliant light. For centuries, theologians have interpreted this as a mystical vision of God's throne room, rich with symbolic meaning about divine nature and heavenly hierarchy. But stripped of theological assumption, Ezekiel's account reads remarkably like a close encounter with advanced technology. The wheels that moved in any direction without turning, the crystalline dome that might have been transparent metal, the beings that seemed to be wearing some form of protective equipment, the brilliant lights and the sound like rushing water or the voice of the Almighty. The language barrier between ancient experience and modern understanding creates a gap filled with interpretation. When desert nomads encountered something beyond their technological framework, they described it in terms they knew. Chariots were their most advanced vehicles. Fire was their most impressive energy source. Winged creatures represented the pinnacle of mobility and power. This pattern repeats throughout religious literature. The Hindu Vedas describe vimanas, flying palaces of the gods that could travel between worlds. The Book of Enoch tells of beings called Watchers who descended from heaven and taught humanity forbidden knowledge. Native American traditions speak of star people who came from the sky. Aboriginal Australians preserve dreamtime stories of beings from the stars who shaped the land and gave gifts of knowledge. Each culture translates the experience through its own symbolic language, but the underlying structure remains consistent. Beings from above. Advanced technology interpreted as magic. Knowledge transferred from superior to inferior civilizations. Genetic mixing between human and non-human entities. The Catholic Church has never denied the existence of other forms of life in the universe. In fact, its official position has evolved toward acceptance of the possibility. But the Church moves carefully when dealing with interpretations that might challenge fundamental doctrines about human uniqueness and divine revelation. What becomes fascinating is how easily theological language accommodates extraterrestrial interpretation when viewed through a different lens. Angels, after all, are described as messengers between realms. They appear suddenly, deliver information, and vanish. They possess knowledge beyond human understanding. They can take physical form when necessary, but exist primarily in a realm beyond normal perception. These characteristics align remarkably well with modern descriptions of extraterrestrial contact. Advanced beings who can travel between worlds. Technology that allows sudden appearance and disappearance. Knowledge that surpasses human science. The ability to interact physically with humans while maintaining their base in locations beyond normal access. The Virgin Mary's appearances throughout history take on different significance when viewed through this lens. The Lady of Fatima appears as a being of light to 3 shepherd children, delivering messages about humanity's future and performing demonstrations that alter the behavior of the sun itself. She promises to return at specific times and does so, witnessed by tens of thousands. She communicates directly into the minds of her chosen witnesses, while remaining largely invisible to others. Strip away the religious interpretation, and the pattern resembles nothing so much as a series of planned contacts between an advanced intelligence and selected human representatives. The witnesses are children, more likely to accept extraordinary experiences without the filters of adult skepticism. The messages concern humanity's future and the consequences of its choices. The demonstrations involve apparent manipulation of natural forces that suggest technology beyond current human capabilities. The Vatican's response to such encounters reveals its sophisticated understanding of the phenomenon. It investigates thoroughly, often taking decades to reach conclusions. It applies scientific methodology, examining witnesses, analyzing physical evidence, and consulting experts in relevant fields. Most reported apparitions are quietly dismissed. Only a select few receive official recognition. This process suggests an institution that understands it is dealing with something real and significant, but also something that requires careful management. The Church doesn't simply accept all claims of supernatural contact, nor does it categorically deny them. Instead, it applies careful criteria that might serve to separate genuine encounters with non-human intelligence from psychological phenomena or deliberate deception. Meanwhile, the language of theology continues to provide a framework for experiences that might otherwise challenge human understanding too directly. Angels remain angels, regardless of their true nature. Miracles remain miraculous, regardless of their technological explanation. The divine remains divine, even if it operates through means more sophisticated than primitive human understanding could originally comprehend. High in the mountains of Arizona, where the desert air thins and the stars burn with crystalline clarity, stands one of the most sophisticated observatories in the world. A Vatican advanced technology telescope peers into the depths of space with instruments that would be the envy of any scientific institution. But this is no secular research facility. It is operated by the Jesuit order, those black-robed intellectuals who have served as the Catholic Church's scholars, missionaries, and some would suggest intelligence gatherers for nearly 5 centuries. The presence of Catholic priests at the forefront of astronomical research might surprise those who remember the Church says historical conflicts with science. But the Jesuits have always occupied a unique position within the Catholic hierarchy. Founded by Ignatius Loyola as the intellectual arm of the Counter-Reformation, they have consistently pushed the boundaries of knowledge while maintaining absolute loyalty to papal authority. These are not ordinary parish priests. Jesuit astronomers hold advanced degrees from the world's finest universities. They publish in peer-reviewed journals. They collaborate with secular institutions and government agencies. They speak the language of modern science with complete fluency. Yet they also move within the inner circles of Vatican power, privy to discussions and decisions that never reach public awareness. Father José Gabriel Funes, former director of the Vatican Observatory, captured global attention in 2008 when he stated unequivocally that the existence of extraterrestrial life would not contradict Catholic faith. Just as there is a multiplicity of creatures on Earth, there can be other beings, even intelligent ones, created by God, he declared. This is not in contrast with our faith, because we cannot limit God as creative freedom. Such statements might seem like simple theological speculation, but they carry weight within the context of Vatican communications. The Church does not speak casually about matters of doctrine. When a high-ranking Vatican official makes public statements about extraterrestrial life, he does so with the knowledge and approval of his superiors. He speaks not as an individual scientist, but as a representative of an institution that has spent centuries carefully managing revolutionary ideas. The Vatican Observatory's research focuses heavily on the search for exoplanets, worlds, orbiting distant stars that might harbor life. Their scientists participate in international collaborations designed to detect biosignatures in alien atmospheres. They contribute to projects that could, within the next few decades, provide definitive proof that life exists elsewhere in the universe. Why would the Catholic Church involve itself so directly in research that could fundamentally challenge humanity's understanding of its place in creation? The cynical answer suggests preparation, positioning the Church to maintain relevance when extraterrestrial life is eventually discovered. But a more intriguing possibility emerges when one considers the Jesuits' historical role as collectors and guardians of sensitive information. The Society of Jesus has always operated on multiple levels. Publicly, they serve as educators, missionaries, and scholars. Privately, they function as an intelligence network that spans the globe. Jesuit missionaries in remote corners of the world have historically reported back not only on spiritual matters, but on political, social, and technological developments. They have served as diplomatic liaisons, cultural bridges, and information gatherers for papal policymakers. This dual nature makes them ideal candidates for managing the Church's relationship with extraterrestrial phenomena. They possess the scientific credentials to engage with secular researchers and government agencies. They have the institutional authority to speak for the Vatican when necessary. Most importantly, they understand the delicate balance between revelation and discretion that has characterized Church policy for centuries. Consider the curious case of Father Malachi Martin, a Jesuit who left the order in the 1960s and subsequently made startling claims about Vatican secrets. Before his death in 1999, Martin spoke repeatedly about a sign in the sky that Vatican astronomers were expecting, an event that would fundamentally alter humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. He suggested that the Church possessed knowledge of coming extraterrestrial contact and was preparing for its theological implications. While Martin's claims cannot be verified, they gain significance when viewed alongside the Vatican's increasing openness about extraterrestrial possibilities. The Church that once condemned Galileo for suggesting that Earth was not the center of the universe now actively searches for life on other worlds. The institution that historically guarded its theological monopolies now openly discusses the spiritual implications of alien contact. The Jesuit astronomers represent more than just the Church's engagement with modern science. They embody a sophisticated strategy for managing revolutionary knowledge. By positioning itself at the forefront of extraterrestrial research, the Vatican ensures it will be involved in any discoveries that emerge. By speaking openly about theological implications, it prepares its followers for paradigm shifts that might otherwise prove traumatic. And by maintaining its network of highly educated, absolutely loyal scientists in key research positions, the Church preserves its ancient role as mediator between humanity and the cosmos. Whether that cosmos contains only natural phenomena or intelligent visitors from distant worlds, the Vatican will be ready. The Jesuits watch the skies with instruments that can detect planets thousands of light years away. They search for signs of life with the same methodical precision their predecessors once applied to mapping new continents or translating ancient languages. They prepare for discoveries that could reshape human civilization, armed with both cutting-edge technology and 2,000 years of experience in managing revolutionary truth. In the high desert of Arizona, where starlight falls like silver rain on metal and glass, Catholic priests peer into the infinite darkness and wait for answers that might already be waiting in the vaults beneath. Vatican City. The year was 1633. In the ornate chambers of the Roman Inquisition, an old man knelt before a tribunal of cardinals clothed in scarlet robes. Galileo Galilei, once the most celebrated natural philosopher in Europe, had been summoned to answer for the heretical proposition that the earth moved around the sun rather than standing fixed at the center of God as creation. The trial was theater. The outcome had been predetermined. The man who had pointed his telescope toward Jupiter and discovered moons that clearly orbited another world, who had observed the phases of Venus and confirmed that planets were spherical bodies like Earth, who had seen the Milky Way resolve into countless stars, was forced to recant ideas that his own eyes had confirmed. "I abjure, curse, and detest the aforesaid errors and heresies." Galileo read from a prepared statement, his voice barely audible in the stone chamber. Legend claims that as he rose from his knees, he whispered under his breath, "Eper si move." And yet it moves. The Church had silenced cosmic truth to preserve earthly authority. But truth, like starlight, has a way of traveling across vast distances and emerging when least expected. 4 centuries later, the Vatican operates some of the world's most advanced astronomical facilities. The same institution that condemned Galileo for suggesting that Earth was not the center of creation now searches distant galaxies for signs of other worlds, other possibilities, other forms of life that might exist in God's vast cosmos. The transformation seems complete, but the pattern remains unchanged. The Catholic Church still controls the flow of revolutionary knowledge. It still manages the pace of revelation. It still stands as gatekeeper between humanity and truths that might prove too disturbing for mass consumption. What cosmic truths might the modern Vatican be protecting? What discoveries rest in classified files, deemed too dangerous for immediate revelation? What contemporary Galileos might be working within the system, their findings carefully contained until the proper moment for disclosure arrives? The historical precedent is clear. When Galileo's telescopic observations threatened the geocentric worldview that placed humanity at the center of creation, the Church suppressed the evidence for nearly 2 centuries. Not until 1822 did the Vatican officially acknowledge that the Earth orbited the Sun. Not until 1992 did Pope John Paul II formally rehabilitate Galileo and admit the Church's error. This pattern of suppression, followed by controlled acknowledgement, reveals something crucial about Vatican methodology. The Church doesn't deny revolutionary truth indefinitely. Instead, it manages the timing of revelation to minimize disruption to existing power structures and belief systems. It allows new ideas to percolate slowly through academic circles before gradually introducing them to broader populations. Today's Jesuit astronomers might be the modern equivalents of Galileo, armed with instruments that dwarf his primitive telescope in power and sophistication. They peer into cosmic depths that reveal wonders the Italian mathematician could never have imagined. Exoplanets orbiting distant stars, organic molecules floating in interstellar space, radio signals from sources that defy easy explanation. But unlike their historical predecessor, these modern astronomical investigators work within the system rather than challenging it from outside. They publish their findings through Vatican channels. They frame their discoveries within theological contexts. They serve as both scientists and priests, balancing empirical observation with institutional loyalty. This arrangement offers advantages to all parties involved. The Vatican maintains control over potentially explosive discoveries while positioning itself at the forefront of scientific progress. The scientists receive resources and support for their research while avoiding the persecution that befell earlier investigators. Humanity receives a gradual introduction to cosmic realities rather than sudden, traumatic revelations. Yet questions remain about what discoveries might be considered too sensitive for immediate publication. If Galileo's simple observation that Earth orbited the Sun required centuries to acknowledge, how might the Church handle evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence? How long might it take to reveal proof that humanity is not alone in the universe? The Vatican's recent openness about extraterrestrial possibilities suggests a carefully orchestrated preparation for such revelations. When Church officials speak publicly about the theological implications of alien life, when Vatican astronomers participate in searches for extraterrestrial intelligence, when papal statements acknowledge the vastness of creation and the possibility of other inhabited worlds, they may be laying groundwork for disclosures that would make Galileo's discoveries seem trivial by comparison. The ghost of the Italian astronomer haunts the corridors of modern Vatican science, a reminder of what happens when revolutionary truth collides with institutional inertia. but it also serves as a guide for how such collisions might be managed more skillfully in the future. Galileo was silenced because he operated outside church authority, publishing his findings in vernacular Italian rather than scholarly Latin, appealing directly to popular audiences rather than working through ecclesiastical channels. He forced the church's hand by making his discoveries public before the institution was prepared to acknowledge their implications. Modern Vatican astronomers operate under no such constraints. They work within the system, publish through appropriate channels, and allow the Church to control the pace and presentation of their findings. They serve as Galileo's intellectual heirs while avoiding his political mistakes. The telescope that Galileo first pointed toward the heavens in 1609 opened a window into cosmic reality that could never again be closed. The instruments that peer into space from Vatican facilities today may be preparing to open windows that will prove even more revolutionary. The question is not whether such revelations will come, but how skillfully the Church will manage their disclosure. In the shadow of Galileo's ghost, Vatican astronomers continue their patient observation of the cosmos, knowing that truth has its own timeline and that some discoveries are worth waiting centuries to reveal. The book of Ezekiel opens with words that have puzzled theologians for millennia. The heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. What follows is an account so vivid, so technically detailed, so unlike typical religious visions that it reads more like a pilot's flight report than a mystical experience. The prophet describes craft that descend from the sky with the sound of rushing waters. He speaks of beings whose appearance was like that of a man, but who possessed capabilities far beyond human limitations. He details vehicles with wheels that could move in any direction without turning, covered with what seemed to be eyes, but might have been sensors or lights. Above these craft stretched something like a crystal dome, transparent yet solid, beneath which the beings moved with purpose and precision. Ezekiel's encounter was not unique in ancient literature. Throughout the biblical narrative, similar descriptions emerge of beings who descend from above, interact with humanity, and depart again for realms beyond normal perception. The language is consistent across cultures and centuries. Lights in the sky, beings of extraordinary appearance, the transfer of knowledge or genetic material, and warnings about humanity's future. The Hebrew scriptures speak of the Nephilim, described as the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. The text suggests these unions produced giants, beings of great stature and ability, who dominated the ancient world until they were destroyed in the flood. Traditional theology interprets the sons of God as fallen angels, supernatural beings who violated divine law by mating with humans. But what if the description was more literal than metaphorical? What if the sons of God were visitors from other worlds, technologically advanced beings who arrived from the heavens and interacted genetically with primitive human populations? The resulting hybrid offspring would naturally possess capabilities beyond normal human range: greater size, enhanced intelligence, extended lifespans. This interpretation finds support in the Book of Enoch, excluded from the biblical canon but preserved in ancient manuscripts. Enoch provides detailed accounts of the Watchers, beings who descended from heaven and taught humanity forbidden knowledge: metallurgy, astronomy, mathematics, and the arts of war. The text describes their leader, Azazel, as one who taught men to make swords, and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth. The pattern repeats throughout ancient literature. The Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh describes the Anunnaki, beings who came from the heavens and established civilization on earth. The Sumerian king list speaks of rulers whose reigns lasted thousands of years, beings who descended from heaven to govern humanity. Hindu texts describe the Devas and Asuras, celestial beings who possessed flying vehicles called Vimanas and weapons of incredible destructive power. Each culture preserved similar accounts, but filtered them through different linguistic and cultural frameworks. The essential elements remained consistent: advanced beings from the sky, the transfer of knowledge and technology, genetic interaction between visitors and humans, an eventual conflict that led to catastrophic destruction. The Vatican's approach to these texts reveals sophisticated understanding of their potential implications. Church scholars have spent centuries developing interpretative frameworks that preserve the texts' essential meaning while avoiding conclusions that might challenge fundamental doctrines about human origins and divine revelation. Yet recent statements from Vatican officials suggest a growing willingness to consider more literal interpretations. When church astronomers speak openly about the possibility of extraterrestrial life, when theologians discuss the spiritual implications of contact with alien intelligences, when papal statements acknowledge that God's creation might be far vaster and more diverse than previously imagined, they may be preparing for revelations that would cast these ancient texts in an entirely new light. The technical details preserved in biblical accounts become particularly intriguing when viewed through the lens of modern technology. Ezekiel's description of wheels within wheels that could move in any direction sounds remarkably like contemporary accounts of UFO propulsion systems. His observation of beings who sparkled like burnished bronze resembles modern descriptions of entities wearing metallic protective suits. The prophet's account of being lifted up and transported to distant locations mirrors contemporary reports of alien abduction experiences. His detailed knowledge of temple architecture that he had never seen physically suggests information transfer through advanced technological means. His prophecies about future events imply access to knowledge systems beyond normal human capabilities. Similar technical elements appear throughout biblical literature. Elijah's transportation to heaven in a whirlwind, accompanied by chariots of fire, could describe observation of an advanced retrieval system. Moses' encounters with divine presence on Mount Sinai, complete with smoke, fire, and the mountain itself shaking, might document close contact with landed craft. The pillar of cloud by day and fire by night that guided the Israelites through the wilderness could represent surveillance and guidance technology. The Catholic Church's preservation of these texts, despite their potentially explosive implications, suggests an institution that understands their true significance. While maintaining theological interpretations for public consumption, the Vatican may possess additional documentation that clarifies the extraterrestrial nature of these encounters. Ancient visitors to biblical times would have appeared godlike to primitive human observers. Their technology would have seemed miraculous. Their knowledge would have surpassed human understanding by orders of magnitude. Their physical appearance might have been sufficiently human-like to allow genetic compatibility, while remaining distinct enough to inspire awe and worship. The pattern of contact, knowledge transfer, genetic mixing, and eventual departure that characterizes biblical accounts matches hypothetical models of how advanced civilizations might interact with developing worlds. The careful preservation of these accounts by religious authorities suggests institutional awareness that they might represent historical documentation rather than purely symbolic literature. In the climate-controlled vaults beneath Vatican City, where the most sensitive manuscripts rest in eternal silence, additional texts may exist that provide even clearer accounts of humanity as early encounters with visitors from the stars. These documents, too dangerous for public revelation, but too important for destruction, wait for a generation prepared to understand that the ancient stories might have been more literal than anyone dared believe. The year was 1917. The Great War raged across Europe, consuming a generation in trenches that stretched like scars across the continent. In the hills of central Portugal, far from the mechanized horror of modern warfare, 3 shepherd children tended their flocks in meadows that seemed untouched by the centuries' violence. It was here, on the 13th day of May, that 10-year-old Lucia Santos and her cousins, Francisco and Jacinta Marto, encountered something that would transform their lives and challenge the Catholic Church's understanding of divine revelation. The children described a lady of extraordinary beauty who appeared to them in a brilliant light above a small oak tree. She was clothed in white robes that seemed to generate their own illumination, and she spoke without moving her lips, communicating directly into their minds. She told them she came from heaven and asked them to return to the same location on the 13th day of each subsequent month. The Lady of Fatima, as she came to be known, made several promises during these encounters. She would perform a miracle on October 13th that would convince skeptics of her authenticity. She would reveal 3 secrets about humanity's future, and she would return at precisely scheduled intervals, demonstrating a level of technological precision that seems unusual for traditional religious apparitions. Word of the children's visions spread throughout the region. By June, dozens of people gathered to witness the encounters, though most could see nothing more than the children speaking to an invisible presence. By August, hundreds arrived. The local government, hostile to religious manifestations during Portugal's Republican period, arrested the children and threatened them with torture. Yet they refused to recant their testimony or reveal the secrets they claimed to have received. October 13, 1917, brought an estimated 70,000 pilgrims to the remote hillside. They came from across Portugal and beyond, drawn by promises of a miracle that would validate the children's claims. What they witnessed that day remains one of the most documented paranormal events in modern history. At precisely noon, despite overcast skies, the clouds suddenly parted to reveal the sun. But this was not the familiar solar disk that had risen every day since creation. Witnesses described a silver disk that spun rapidly, casting colored lights across the landscape like a cosmic kaleidoscope. The object pulsed with brilliant illumination, then suddenly plunged toward the earth, as if it would crash into the terrified crowd. The miracle of the sun lasted approximately 10 minutes. Professional photographers captured images of the crowd looking skyward, their faces illuminated by strange lights. Newspaper reporters, including skeptics who had come to debunk the event, published accounts that struggled to explain what they had observed. Most remarkably, the clothes of the pilgrims, soaked by morning rains, were completely dry when the phenomenon ended. Secular investigations have proposed various explanations for the Fatima events: atmospheric anomalies, mass hallucination, optical illusions caused by staring at the sun. Yet none of these theories adequately explains the precise timing, the photographic evidence, or the detailed consistency of witness accounts from observers separated by considerable distances. The 3 secrets revealed to the children add another layer of intrigue to the Fatima mystery. The first 2, eventually disclosed by the Vatican, concerned prophecies about World War II and the spread of communism from Russia. The 3rd secret remained classified for decades, finally released in 2000 as a vision of the persecution of the Church and the attempted assassination of the Pope. Yet many researchers question whether the Vatican revealed the complete 3rd secret. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, later Pope Benedict XVI, admitted that the disclosure contained interpretation rather than the raw text of Lucia's original account. Sister Lucia herself, the sole surviving witness, made cryptic statements suggesting that the full revelation remained hidden. The technological aspects of the Fatima encounters become particularly intriguing when analyzed through the lens of modern UFO research. The entity's ability to appear and disappear at will, the precise scheduling of encounters, the direct mental communication with selected witnesses while remaining largely invisible to others, the demonstration involving apparent manipulation of solar observation that created a controlled spectacle for thousands of witnesses. These characteristics align closely with contemporary reports of extraterrestrial contact, advanced beings who can control their visibility through technological means, scheduled contacts that demonstrate precise planning and capability, telepathic communication methods that bypass normal sensory channels, demonstrations of advanced technology designed to impress observers and validate the contact experience. The Catholic Church's response to Fatima reveals institutional sophistication in dealing with extraordinary phenomena. Rather than immediately accepting or rejecting the children's claims, church investigators spent years examining the evidence. They interviewed witnesses, analyzed testimony, and consulted experts in relevant fields. The eventual approval came only after exhaustive investigation that applied scientific methodology to potentially supernatural events. This process suggests an institution experienced in evaluating claims of non-human contact. The Vatican's criteria for authenticating apparitions might serve equally well for validating extraterrestrial encounters. A careful documentation, the emphasis on multiple witnesses, the analysis of physical effects, all could apply to either religious or extraterrestrial phenomena. A message delivered through the Fatima encounters focused heavily on humanity as future and the consequences of its choices. Warnings about war, persecution, and spiritual crisis. Promises of eventual triumph and peace. Requests for prayer, penance, and devotion to specific religious practices. These themes resonate with contemporary channeled communications from alleged extraterrestrial sources, which often emphasize similar concerns about human spiritual development and planetary survival. The Lady of Fatima promised to return, and apparitions continued to be reported at the site for decades afterward. Modern pilgrims still describe unusual lights, photographic anomalies, and encounters with luminous beings. The phenomenon appears to be ongoing rather than confined to the original 1917 encounters. In the Vatican archives, files relating to Fatima occupy considerable space. Official documentation, witness testimonies, investigative reports, and ongoing correspondence with religious authorities who monitor the site. But among these acknowledged materials, other documents may rest that provide additional context for understanding the true nature of the Fatima encounters. What if the Lady of Fatima was not a traditional religious apparition, but first contact with an intelligence that used familiar religious symbolism to communicate with a deeply Catholic population? What if the secrets revealed to the children contained information about humanity's seed-tooth cosmic context that the Church deemed too dangerous for immediate revelation? What if Fatima represents a case study in how advanced civilizations might gradually introduce themselves to developing worlds? The children of Fatima claim to have seen heaven and spoken with beings of light. In the early 21st century, as humanity searches the skies for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence, their testimony takes on new significance. They may have been among the first to document what future generations will recognize as humanity's introduction to a larger cosmic community. In the summer of 1944, 27 years after her first encounter with the Lady of Light, Sister Lucia dos Santos sat in her convent cell and committed to paper the final secret revealed at Fatima. Her hand trembled as she wrote, not from age or infirmity, but from the weight of knowledge that had burdened her since childhood. The envelope containing her words was sealed and sent to the Vatican with strict instructions. It was not to be opened before 1960. Lucia believed that by then, the world might be prepared to understand truths that seemed too dangerous for immediate revelation. The document disappeared into the Vatican's secret archives, where it remained untouched for 16 years. When 1960 arrived, Pope John XXIII opened the envelope, read its contents, and immediately ordered it resealed. The third secret, he declared, would remain classified indefinitely. It was too disturbing, too dangerous, too likely to cause panic among the faithful. For 4 decades, the sealed envelope became one of the Vatican's most tantalizing mysteries. Speculation ran wild about its contents. Some suggested it prophesied nuclear war or global apostasy. Others believed it revealed the date of the world's end or described supernatural chastisements that would befall humanity. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, who served as prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, admitted that the secret concerned the dangers threatening the faith and the life of the Christian, and therefore of the world. The Vatican's silence only intensified curiosity. If the third secret was simply another prophecy about war or persecution, why the extraordinary secrecy? Why had multiple popes chosen to keep it hidden? What could be so threatening that an institution which had survived nearly 2,000 years of crisis and upheaval feared to reveal it? The answer came partially in 2000, when Pope John Paul II finally authorized release of what the Vatican claimed was the complete third secret. The disclosed text described a vision of the persecution of Christians, including the attempted assassination of a bishop clothed in white, interpreted as the Pope himself, referencing the 1981 assassination attempt that nearly claimed John Paul's life. Yet even as the Vatican proclaimed full disclosure, questions persisted. Cardinal Tarcisio Bertone, who oversaw the revelation, admitted that the published text represented interpretation rather than raw transcription. Sister Lucia's original Portuguese manuscript was modified and edited for public consumption. The Vatican emphasized symbolic meaning while downplaying literal details. More troubling were the mathematical inconsistencies. The published text was remarkably brief, barely 4 pages, yet Sister Lucia had written extensively about the difficulty of recording the vision and her initial reluctance to commit it to paper. Biographers noted that her other writings about the first 2 secrets were substantially longer and more detailed. Why would the most significant revelation be the shortest? Cardinal Luigi Ciappi, Pope John Paul II's personal theologian, made a cryptic statement before his death that added fuel to speculation. In the third secret, it is foretold, among other things, that the great apostasy in the Church will begin at the top. This suggested content about internal church corruption that bore little resemblance to the sanitized vision eventually released to the public. Father Malachi Martin, the former Jesuit who claimed knowledge of Vatican secrets, was more direct in his assessments. In interviews throughout the 1990s, he suggested that the third secret revealed information about extraterrestrial contact that would fundamentally challenge human understanding of creation and humanity's place in the cosmos. While Martin's claims cannot be independently verified, his statements gain significance when viewed alongside the Vatican's evolving position on extraterrestrial life. The timing of the third secret's eventual release also raises questions. The year 2000 marked not only the new millennium, but also a period of unprecedented Vatican openness about the possibility of life on other worlds. Father Jose Gabriel Funes would soon make his landmark statements about extraterrestrial intelligence being compatible with Catholic theology. Vatican astronomers were becoming increasingly vocal about their search for habitable exoplanets. Was the partial revelation of the third secret part of a larger strategy to gradually prepare humanity for more extraordinary disclosures? By releasing sanitized content while maintaining official secrecy about more sensitive material, the Vatican could satisfy public curiosity while preserving its ability to control the pace of revelation. The Lady of Fatima had promised that humanity would eventually understand her complete message when it was ready to receive such knowledge. She spoke of a time when the secrets would be revealed and their true significance would become clear. Perhaps that time approaches as human technology advances to the point where extraterrestrial contact becomes not just possible, but inevitable. In the climate-controlled vaults beneath Vatican City, Sister Lucia's original manuscript may still rest alongside other documents deemed too sensitive for public revelation. The complete text might contain details about humanity's cosmic context that the Church considers premature for mass consumption. References to other worlds, other forms of life, other intelligences that share the vast universe might wait between carefully preserved pages. The third secret of Fatima may ultimately prove to be less about the end of the world than about the beginning of humanity's recognition that it never was alone in the world. The Lady of Light who appeared to 3 shepherd children might have been preparing our species for revelations that would expand rather than destroy our understanding of creation as scope and beauty. The children of Fatima were told that they would suffer greatly for the knowledge they received. but that their suffering would help prepare humanity for truths it was not yet ready to comprehend. As the world moves deeper into the 21st century, with telescopes detecting potentially habitable worlds and radio telescopes listening for signs of intelligent communication, their sacrifice may finally serve its intended purpose. The envelope that contained Sister Lucia's complete vision may have been opened many times since 1944, read by popes and cardinals who understood its implications and chose to wait for a more appropriate moment for revelation. That moment may be approaching as human consciousness expands to accommodate possibilities that once seemed impossible. The third secret of Fatima waits in Vatican archives, patient as starlight, knowing that truth has its own timeline and that some revelations are worth waiting nearly a century to unveil. In the sterile conference rooms of the Pentagon, where classified briefings shape national security policy, an unexpected participant occasionally occupied chairs reserved for the highest echelons of military intelligence. Not a general or admiral, not a cabinet secretary or agency director, but men in simple black cassocks who carried diplomatic passports and spoke with the quiet authority of an institution older than the United States itself. The Vatican's involvement in America's UFO investigations during the Cold War remains one of the most intriguing aspects of Project Blue Book, the Air Force program that officially investigated unidentified flying objects from 1952 to 1969. While the project's public face emphasized scientific skepticism and conventional explanations, its classified operations revealed a more complex reality where religious authorities played advisory roles that have never been fully acknowledged. The relationship began in the early 1950s, when a series of UFO sightings over Washington, D.C. caused alarm in intelligence circles already paranoid about Soviet capabilities. The objects demonstrated flight characteristics that surpassed known technology, appearing on multiple radar systems while executing maneuvers that defied conventional physics. Military leaders faced the possibility that either the Soviets had developed revolutionary aerospace technology or humanity was encountering something genuinely extraterrestrial. In this climate of uncertainty, intelligence agencies reached out to institutions with experience in evaluating extraordinary claims. The Catholic Church, with its sophisticated methodology for investigating miraculous phenomena, possessed exactly the expertise that baffled military investigators needed. Vatican officials had spent centuries developing criteria for distinguishing genuine supernatural events from psychological phenomena, deliberate deception, or misunderstood natural occurrences. The initial contacts occurred through informal diplomatic channels. Monsignor Corrado Balducci, the Vatican's chief exorcist and an expert in paranormal investigation, began receiving briefings about UFO encounters from American intelligence officials. His assessment was remarkably prescient. The phenomena appeared genuine, displayed characteristics consistent with advanced intelligence, and posed no immediate threat to human welfare. Balducci's involvement marked the beginning of a collaboration that would span decades. The Vatican provided analytical framework, while American agencies supplied raw data and resources for investigation. Church officials brought theological perspective to encounters that challenged conventional understanding of humanity's place in creation. Military investigators gained access to institutional knowledge about extraordinary phenomena that secular science struggled to explain adequately. The partnership proved mutually beneficial during some of Project Blue Book's most significant cases. When police officer Lonnie Zamora encountered a landed craft and humanoid beings in Socorro, New Mexico in 1964, Vatican consultants helped evaluate his testimony using criteria developed for assessing religious visions. Their conclusion that Zamora was a credible witness experiencing genuine contact influenced the military's decision to classify his encounter as unexplained rather than dismissed. Similar Vatican input shaped investigations of the 1966 Westall School incident in Australia, where more than 200 students and teachers witnessed multiple craft hovering over their campus. Church officials provided expertise in evaluating mass witness testimony, drawing on centuries of experience with religious apparitions witnessed by large groups. Their involvement helped establish protocols for interviewing multiple witnesses while avoiding contamination of testimony. The theological implications of UFO encounters created particular challenges for both institutions. If the phenomena represented contact with extraterrestrial intelligence, how would this affect human understanding of creation, salvation, and divine purpose? Vatican theologians began developing frameworks for incorporating alien life into Catholic doctrine decades before such discussions entered mainstream religious discourse. These efforts received unofficial sanction from the highest levels of church hierarchy. Pope John XXIII, who convened the Second Vatican Council to modernize Catholic teaching, reportedly received briefings about UFO investigations and expressed interest in their theological implications. His successor, Paul VI, continued the collaboration while maintaining strict secrecy about the Church's involvement in military intelligence operations. The relationship extended beyond simple consultation. Vatican archives began collecting UFO reports from Catholic institutions worldwide, creating a parallel database that complemented official military investigations. Priests stationed in remote locations often possessed the linguistic skills and cultural knowledge necessary to investigate sightings in areas where military personnel would have attracted unwanted attention. Jesuit missions proved particularly valuable sources of information. Their educational background enabled them to provide technically accurate descriptions of unusual phenomena, while their global network allowed for rapid communication about significant events. Reports flowed through ecclesiastical channels that operated independently of government oversight, providing the Vatican with intelligence that sometimes preceded official military awareness. The collaboration faced significant challenges during the 1960s as anti-war sentiment increased scrutiny of military activities. The Church's involvement in intelligence operations risked compromising its moral authority if exposed publicly. Vatican officials became increasingly cautious about direct participation while maintaining informal connections through back channels. The official termination of Project Blue Book in 1969 marked the end of formal cooperation, but not the end of the relationship itself. The intelligence networks established during the collaboration continued operating through other agencies and programs. The Vatican maintained its own UFO investigation capabilities while reducing its profile in American operations. Today, declassified documents hint at the scope of this collaboration without revealing its full extent. References to religious consultants appear in redacted reports. Theological assessments occupy classified appendices. The names of church officials involved remain protected under diplomatic immunity and national security classifications. Yet the partnership's influence persists in contemporary Vatican positions on extraterrestrial life. The Church's increasing openness about alien possibilities reflects decades of preparation and analysis that began during the Cold War collaboration with American intelligence. Statements from Vatican astronomers about the theological compatibility of alien life carry the weight of institutional knowledge, gained through direct involvement in UFO investigations. In the deepest vaults of Vatican archives, files may exist that document this collaboration in detail. Reports on specific cases, theological analyses of contact scenarios, and strategic assessments of disclosure timing might rest alongside other sensitive diplomatic materials. These documents, classified at levels that transcend normal government secrecy, wait for a time when their revelation serves both institutions' long-term interests. The Vatican and Project Blue Book represented an unlikely partnership between sacred and secular authorities, united by the recognition that some phenomena transcend conventional categories of understanding. Their collaboration helped establish frameworks for evaluating extraordinary claims that continue influencing both religious and scientific approaches to the possibility of extraterrestrial contact. In the deepest chambers of the Vatican Observatory's archives, where humidity-controlled cases preserve documents spanning 8 centuries of celestial observation, an extraordinary collection rests in climate-controlled silence. These are not the familiar star charts and planetary tables that adorn museum displays. They are the anomalous records, the observations that defied explanation, the celestial events that challenged understanding and were quietly filed away until human knowledge could evolve sufficiently to comprehend their significance. The Catholic Church has been systematically observing the heavens since the 13th century, when Pope Gregory IX established the first papal astronomers to reform the calendar and improve navigation for Christian missions. What began as practical necessity evolved into one of the world's most comprehensive programs of astronomical documentation. Every unusual celestial event, every unexplained light, every object that moved against the established order of the heavens found its way into carefully maintained logs. These records reveal a pattern that becomes apparent only when viewed across centuries rather than years. Certain types of anomalous phenomena appear with disturbing regularity, displaying characteristics that suggest intelligence rather than random natural occurrence. Objects that accelerate and decelerate in apparent defiance of known physics. Lights that appear to respond to human observation by altering their behavior. Formations of luminous objects that maintain precise geometric relationships while moving across the sky. The earliest documented cases date to the medieval period, when monks charged with maintaining calendrical accuracy reported stars that appeared suddenly, moved in straight lines or perfect circles, then vanished without trace. Brother Francesco da Montecroce, observing from the monastery of San Miniato in 1347, documented what he described as a great star that descended from heaven brilliant as the sun which moved against the sphere of fixed stars, and spoke with the voice of thunder. His account, preserved in illuminated manuscript, includes detailed sketches of the object's appearance and movement patterns. The drawings show a disc-shaped form, surrounded by smaller lights arranged in symmetrical patterns. The object allegedly remained visible for 3 hours, during which it performed maneuvers that violated medieval understanding of celestial mechanics. Brother Francesco noted that the phenomenon occurred during a plague outbreak, leading him to interpret it as divine intervention in human affairs. Similar accounts accumulate through the Renaissance, when improved optical instruments allowed more precise observation of anomalous events. Cardinal Niccolò Ridolfi, serving as papal astronomer under Pope Julius III, maintained meticulous records of what he termed wandering lights that appeared regularly over Rome between 1550 and 1555. His logs describe objects that varied in size from small stars to formations larger than the moon that moved in coordinated patterns suggesting conscious control. The cardinal's observations gained particular significance during the Counter-Reformation, when Protestant reformers began claiming that unusual celestial events represented divine judgment against Catholic corruption. Rather than dismissing these phenomena, church authorities intensified their documentation efforts, recognizing that accurate records might eventually provide explanations that would support, rather than undermine, religious authority. The establishment of the Vatican Observatory in 1582 marked the beginning of truly systematic anomaly documentation. Professional astronomers, armed with increasingly sophisticated instruments, began recording events that challenged conventional astronomical understanding. Their logs reveal consistent patterns of inexplicable phenomena that appear to peak during periods of human crisis or significant historical change. Father Christopher Clavius, the Jesuit mathematician who helped reform the Gregorian calendar, documented numerous sightings of what he called irregular stars that appeared during the period of calendar reform. His private journals, never published but preserved in Vatican archives, describe objects that seem to monitor human activities from elevated positions, appearing most frequently during important papal ceremonies or diplomatic meetings. The 17th century brought telescopic observation and, correspondingly, more detailed documentation of anomalous phenomena. Father Giovanni Battista Riccioli, creator of the lunar nomenclature still used today, recorded observations of objects that passed between Earth and the Moon, casting shadows that could be observed telescopically. His calculations of their size and speed suggested artificial rather than natural origin. These records took on new significance during the 18th century, when Enlightenment thinking began challenging religious explanations for natural phenomena. Rather than abandoning their anomaly documentation, Vatican astronomers intensified their efforts while developing more sophisticated analytical frameworks. They began categorizing sightings by behavior patterns, appearance characteristics, and temporal relationships to human events. Father Angelo Secchi, director of the Vatican Observatory in the 19th century and pioneer of stellar spectroscopy, maintained separate files for observations that defied conventional explanation. His private correspondence reveals growing certainty that some celestial phenomena represented intelligences superior to human understanding, whose purposes remain hidden from earthly comprehension. Secchi's spectroscopic analysis of anomalous lights revealed signatures that matched no known stellar or planetary sources. The objects appeared to generate their own illumination through processes that preceded human understanding of nuclear fusion or electrical generation. His observations suggested controlled energy sources of types that would not be theoretically possible until the 20th century. The modern era has brought even more sophisticated documentation capabilities. Digital cameras, radar tracking, and computerized analysis systems allow Vatican astronomers to record anomalous events with unprecedented precision. The data reveals objects that perform maneuvers requiring energy expenditures that surpass theoretical limits of chemical or even nuclear propulsion systems. These contemporary records show curious correlations with major historical events. Sightings peaked during World War II, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the Chernobyl disaster. The pattern suggests monitoring rather than random visitation, as if intelligence entities maintain surveillance of human civilization during periods of maximum danger or transition. The Vatican's approach to these records reveals institutional sophistication in managing potentially explosive information. Rather than publicizing anomalous observations that might cause panic or undermine religious authority, church astronomers maintain parallel documentation systems. Public records emphasize conventional astronomical discoveries, while classified files preserve evidence of phenomena that challenge current understanding. This dual-track approach allows the Vatican to maintain its reputation for scientific rigor while preserving documentation that might prove crucial for future disclosure decisions. When humanity develops sufficient technological capability to understand or replicate the observed phenomena, the Church will possess 8 centuries of detailed records documenting their presence in Earth's vicinity. The hidden astronomical records of the Vatican Observatory may represent the most comprehensive documentation of anomalous celestial phenomena in human history. They suggest that extraordinary events have been occurring with consistent regularity, observed and recorded by trained professionals using the best available instruments of their respective eras. In climate-controlled vaults beneath Vatican City, these records wait for a time when their revelation might serve humanity's larger interests. They document centuries of evidence that we have never been alone, that intelligence entities have maintained long-term observation of human civilization, and that contact may be far more extensive than official histories acknowledge. The year was 1981. Above the small town of Zaytun, Egypt, thousands of witnesses gathered nightly to observe what they described as apparitions of the Virgin Mary appearing atop the Coptic Orthodox Church of St. Mary. But the phenomenon that captured global attention was not limited to traditional religious visions. Witnesses reported luminous objects in the sky, strange lights that moved in coordinated patterns, and a massive cross of brilliant white light that appeared suspended in the air above the church dome. Egyptian authorities, initially skeptical of religious claims, found themselves documenting events that challenged conventional explanation. Professional photographers captured images of lights that had no apparent source. Engineers analyzed the luminous cross and found no evidence of artificial illumination or projection equipment. Government investigators interviewed thousands of witnesses, including Muslims, Christians, and secular observers, all of whom reported similar experiences despite their vastly different cultural backgrounds. The Zaytun apparitions were not unique in the history of unexplained religious phenomena. Throughout the Catholic Church's records, accounts accumulate of miraculous events that share curious characteristics with contemporary UFO encounters. Lights in the sky, beings of extraordinary appearance, demonstrations of apparent technology that surpasses human capabilities, messages delivered directly into witnesses' minds rather than through normal speech. The traditional response to such events involves careful investigation followed by either approval or dismissal based on theological criteria. But what if these criteria, developed over centuries of experience, have become sophisticated methods for evaluating potential extraterrestrial contact? What if the Church's expertise in distinguishing genuine miraculous events from psychological phenomena, or deliberate deception actually, represents expertise in identifying authentic non-human intelligence? Consider the case of Lourdes, where Bernadette Soubirous reported 18 apparitions of a beautiful lady in 1858. The entity appeared in a grotto, communicated telepathically, and demonstrated knowledge of underground water sources that were subsequently confirmed by geological survey. The spring that appeared at the lady's instruction continues flowing today, and its waters are credited with numerous healing effects that medical science struggles to explain. But strip away religious interpretation, and Bernadette's account resembles contemporary reports of extraterrestrial contact. A being of unusual appearance materializes in a remote location. Communication occurs through direct mental transmission rather than speech. The entity demonstrates advanced knowledge of local environmental conditions. Physical effects persist long after the initial contact, providing ongoing evidence of the encounter's reality. The Vatican's investigation of Lourdes established protocols that could serve equally well for evaluating alien contact claims. Multiple interviews with the primary witness, medical and psychological evaluation to rule out pathology or deception, testimony from secondary witnesses who observed unusual phenomena even if they couldn't see the entity directly, analysis of physical evidence and environmental changes, long-term monitoring to determine whether claimed effects persist over time. These same investigative methods appear in cases throughout church history. At Knock, Ireland, in 1879, 15 witnesses reported seeing luminous figures appear on the wall of their parish church during a thunderstorm. The figures remained visible for 2 hours, while rain fell heavily in all directions, except the area immediately around the church. Investigators found the wall completely dry despite the storm, and luminous impressions remained visible on the stone for several days afterward. At Pont-Main, France, in 1871, children reported seeing a beautiful lady surrounded by stars that formed letters spelling out messages in the sky. Adult witnesses could see the stars and their changing patterns, but not the lady herself, suggesting selective visibility that required specific receptive capabilities. The messages concerned the Franco-Prussian War and proved prophetically accurate about its conclusion. The pattern repeats across cultures and centuries. Fatima's dancing sun, Guadalupe's miraculous image that appeared on Juan Diego's cloak and remains scientifically inexplicable today. The repeated appearances at Medjugorje, where witnesses report ongoing contact with entities who provide detailed information about global events and future developments. Each case involves phenomena that surpass conventional understanding while demonstrating characteristics consistent with advanced intelligence. The entities appear selectively to chosen witnesses. They communicate through sophisticated means that bypass normal sensory channels. They demonstrate knowledge or capabilities that exceed human limitations. They leave physical evidence that persists beyond the initial encounter. The Catholic Church's response reveals institutional expertise in managing potentially revolutionary information. Rather than immediately accepting or rejecting extraordinary claims, Church investigators apply systematic methodology that could serve as a model for evaluating extraterrestrial contact. They understand that genuine contact with non-human intelligence requires careful documentation and gradual revelation to prevent social disruption. Modern cases continue following the established pattern. At Bayside, New York, Veronica Lukin reported apparitions beginning in 1970 that included detailed prophecies about technological developments, political events, and environmental crises. Many of her predictions proved accurate with remarkable precision, suggesting access to information sources beyond normal human knowledge. At Garabandal, Spain, 4 children claimed contact with an entity who demonstrated apparent control over time perception, allowing extended conversations to occur in moments that observers experienced as brief seconds. The children also displayed knowledge of distant events occurring simultaneously with their encounters, implying communication systems that transcended normal space-time limitations. The luminous cross that appeared over Zaytun may have been less miracle than technology, but the distinction becomes meaningless when dealing with capabilities that surpass human understanding by sufficient margins. Advanced civilizations monitoring human development might well use familiar religious symbolism to communicate with populations not yet prepared for direct contact. The Church's careful preservation of these accounts, combined with its sophisticated investigation protocols, suggests an institution that understands it may be documenting something far more significant than traditional religious visions. In Vatican archives, files containing detailed testimony, photographic evidence, and scientific analyses might provide the most comprehensive documentation of extraterrestrial contact in human history. The odd miracles that punctuate Catholic history may represent humanity's earliest systematic documentation of ongoing contact with intelligences that chose to work through existing religious frameworks rather than revealing themselves directly. The luminous crosses, dancing suns, and impossible healings might be demonstrations of advanced technology filtered through the interpretive limitations of observers not yet ready to comprehend their true nature. In the ornate chambers of the Apostolic Palace, where papal audiences shape the spiritual direction of over 1 billion Catholics worldwide, conversations occasionally turn to topics that never appear in official transcripts. Behind closed doors, away from the scribes who record every public utterance, the successors of St. Peter sometimes discuss possibilities that would transform human understanding of creation itself. The modern papacy's approach to extraterrestrial life reveals careful evolution across multiple pontificates, each building upon foundations laid by predecessors while advancing the conversation with deliberate precision. This progression suggests coordination rather than coincidence, institutional strategy rather than individual speculation. Pope Pius XII, who reigned during the UFO wave of the 1950s, made several private statements to close advisors about signs in the heavens that indicated humanity was approaching a great revelation. His personal astronomer, Father Daniel O'Connell, later disclosed that the Pope had expressed certainty about the existence of life on other worlds and believed that contact would occur within his lifetime or shortly thereafter. These private convictions never reached official papal statements, but they influenced Vatican policy in subtle ways. Under Pius XII's direction, the Church began systematically collecting reports of unusual aerial phenomena from Catholic institutions worldwide. Priests in remote locations received instructions to document and report any encounters with unexplained objects or entities. The Vatican's intelligence network, already sophisticated due to its global reach, began focusing on anomalous events that might indicate extraterrestrial contact. Pope John XXIII, who succeeded Pius XII in 1958, continued this quiet investigation while publicly focusing on church reform through the Second Vatican Council. However, private documents released decades later revealed his fascination with astronomical developments and his belief that the Church needed to prepare for cosmic realities that would soon become apparent to humanity. Cardinal Angelo Roncalli, before becoming Pope John XXIII, had served as papal nuncio in France during the period when numerous UFO sightings were reported across Europe. His diplomatic correspondence includes references to unusual aerial phenomena that required careful study and discreet investigation. As Pope, he reportedly received regular briefings about UFO investigations from both church sources and liaison contacts with intelligence agencies. The pontificate of Paul VI marked a significant shift toward more open discussion of extraterrestrial possibilities. In 1963, shortly after his election, Pope Paul VI made his first public comments about life on other worlds during a general audience. "The universe is vast beyond human comprehension," he declared. "To limit God's creative power to Earth alone would be to diminish our understanding of his infinite nature." These statements represented a dramatic departure from traditional Catholic anthropocentrism, which had historically placed humanity at the center of God's creation. Paul VI was effectively preparing Catholic doctrine for the possibility that Earth was not unique, that intelligent life might exist elsewhere in the universe, and that such life would not contradict Catholic teaching about divine creation and human salvation. The preparation became more explicit under Pope John Paul I, whose brief 33-day reign included several private meetings with Vatican astronomers about developments in cosmic understanding that will soon affect church teaching. Though his pontificate ended too quickly to implement major policy changes, his notes and private correspondence revealed plans to establish formal Vatican protocols for first contact scenarios with extraterrestrial intelligence. John Paul II inherited these plans and advanced them significantly during his 26-year reign. Under his authority, the Vatican Observatory expanded its research capabilities and began participating in international programs designed to search for extraterrestrial intelligence. The Pope personally approved funding for radio telescope arrays and endorsed Catholic participation in projects like SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. More significantly, John Paul II authorized the first official theological studies of extraterrestrial contact scenarios. Vatican scholars began developing frameworks for understanding how alien intelligence would fit within Catholic doctrine about creation, salvation, and divine purpose. These studies, conducted in absolute secrecy, explored questions that would become crucial if contact ever occurred. Do aliens have souls? Would they require salvation? How would their existence affect human understanding of Christ's role in cosmic history? The results of these theological investigations remain classified, but their influence appears in subtle changes to Catholic teaching during John Paul II's reign. References to Earth's uniqueness disappeared from official documents. Statements about divine creation began emphasizing the vastness of the universe and the possibility of other worlds. Vatican astronomers received encouragement to speak publicly about their search for extraterrestrial life. Pope Benedict XVI, the former Cardinal Ratzinger, who had overseen the release of the Third Secret of Fatima, continued his predecessor's policies while adding his own theological sophistication to the discussion. His academic background in systematic theology enabled him to address the complex doctrinal questions raised by potential extraterrestrial contact. In 2008, Benedict XVI authorized Father José Gabriel Funes, director of the Vatican Observatory, to make unprecedented public statements about extraterrestrial life. Funes declared that discovering alien intelligence would not contradict Catholic faith and might even strengthen it by demonstrating the vastness of God's creation. These statements represented the most explicit papal approval of extraterrestrial possibilities in church history. Pope Francis has continued this evolutionary trajectory, while adding his characteristic pastoral warmth to discussions of cosmic possibilities. His statements about creation as vastness and humanity as responsibility, as stewards of one world among many, suggest awareness of larger contexts that extend beyond Earth as boundaries. In 2014, Francis made remarkable comments during a meeting with school children who asked about life on other planets. If tomorrow an expedition of Martians came, and some of them came to us here, Martians, right? Green, with that long nose and big ears, just like children paint them. And one says, "But I want to be baptized." What would happen? The Pope has response that such beings would be welcomed into the Church, represented a stunning theological development that received surprisingly little media attention. The silence of popes about definitive knowledge of extraterrestrial contact may reflect institutional policy rather than ignorance. If the Vatican possesses proof of alien intelligence, disclosure would require careful preparation of Catholic populations worldwide. The gradual evolution of papal statements suggests exactly such preparation, moving slowly from denial through acceptance of possibility toward eventual acknowledgement of reality. In the private archives of each pontificate, documents may exist that reveal the true extent of papal knowledge about extraterrestrial contact. Briefing papers, intelligence reports, and theological analyses might await disclosure decisions that depend on global readiness rather than institutional courage. The silence of popes speaks volumes about the weight of knowledge that may rest within Vatican walls. When the successors of St. Peter choose their words with extreme care regarding extraterrestrial possibilities, their caution suggests awareness of truths that would transform human civilization. Their silence may be less about denial than about timing, waiting for a moment when revelation serves rather than threatens the spiritual welfare of humanity. In the hushed galleries of the Vatican museums, where masterpieces spanning 2 millennia line marble corridors in eternal procession, careful observers notice details that seem oddly out of place. Among the angels and saints, the biblical scenes and theological allegories, strange objects appear with disturbing frequency. Disc-shaped forms hover in painted skies. Beings with unusual characteristics occupy corners of religious compositions. Lights emanate from sources that have no apparent connection to divine symbolism. Art historians have traditionally interpreted these elements as artistic convention or symbolic representation. But when viewed through the lens of extraterrestrial possibility, they suggest something far more intriguing. A visual record of encounters that were too extraordinary for direct documentation, but too significant to omit entirely from the permanent record. The pattern begins with the earliest Christian art in Roman catacombs, where primitive frescoes depict scenes from biblical narratives. Among the familiar images of fish and crosses, loaves and fishes, occasional anomalies appear. Circular objects with radiating lines hover above figures in ways that suggest observation rather than decoration. Beings with enlarged heads in unusual proportions stand at the margins of conventional religious scenes. These early artistic elements become more pronounced as Christian art develops sophistication during the Byzantine period. The famous mosaic of Christ's baptism in the Arian baptistry in Ravenna includes a curious detail that has puzzled scholars for centuries. Disc-shaped objects in the sky that emit beams of light toward the central figures. Similar objects appear in multiple Byzantine works, suggesting artistic convention that documented something beyond symbolic meaning. The phenomenon intensifies during the medieval period, when illuminated manuscripts begin depicting biblical events with increasingly elaborate detail. The Annunciation becomes a favorite subject for artists who include strange aerial objects in their compositions. In numerous versions, Mary receives the angelic message while disc-shaped forms hover overhead, often with occupants visible inside transparent domes. One of the most striking examples appears in a 5th-10th century manuscript housed in the Vatican Library. The painting shows the Annunciation scene, but above the traditional figures, A clearly defined flying object appears with a humanoid figure visible inside what appears to be a transparent cockpit. Light beams extend from the craft toward Mary, suggesting the divine message is being delivered through technological rather than purely supernatural means. Renaissance art provides even more explicit examples, as artists gain technical skill to render unusual phenomena with photographic precision. Domenico Ghirlandaio's Madonna with Saint Giovannino, painted around 1485, includes a remarkable detail in the background, a shepherd pointing upward at a metallic disc-shaped object hovering in the sky. The object is rendered with careful attention to highlights and shadows that suggest solid, three-dimensional form rather than symbolic representation. Piero della Francesca's Baptism of Christ includes similar anomalies. Above the central scene, disc-shaped objects appear in formation. Rendered with the same realistic technique the artist applied to conventional elements of the composition. The objects cast shadows and reflect light in ways consistent with physical rather than spiritual phenomena. The pattern extends across European art centers and time periods. Flemish painters like Hans Memling included unusual aerial objects in religious compositions. German artists working in the tradition of Dürer occasionally depicted biblical scenes with technological elements that seem anachronistic. Spanish masters painting for church commissions sometimes included details that suggest encounters beyond normal religious experience. What makes these artistic elements particularly intriguing is their consistency across cultures and centuries. Artists working independently in different countries and time periods included similar objects in their religious compositions. The elements appear too frequently to represent coincidence and too consistently to represent pure artistic imagination. The Catholic Church's response to these artistic elements reveals institutional awareness of their significance. Rather than censoring or discouraging such depictions, church authorities often commission works that included unusual details. Vatican collections preserve numerous examples of religious art that contains what contemporary observers might recognize as UFO imagery. This tolerance suggests that church officials understood these artistic elements represented documentation rather than fantasy. Artists working on religious commissions would not have included controversial or heretical elements without ecclesiastical approval. The presence of unusual objects in commissioned church art implies institutional recognition that such phenomena belonged within the scope of religious experience. The technical skill with which these objects are rendered supports the documentation hypothesis. Medieval and Renaissance artists possessed limited imagination for technological forms beyond their experience. They could not have invented detailed depictions of aerodynamic craft, metallic surfaces, or transparent domes without direct observation of such phenomena. Moreover, the objects appear with characteristics that anticipate modern understanding of advanced technology. They show evidence of controlled flight, artificial illumination, and occupancy by intelligent entities. These features would not have been conceivable to artists whose technological horizon was limited to windmills and water wheels. The placement of these objects within religious contexts suggests that encounters with advanced technology were interpreted as spiritual experiences. Artists and their ecclesiastical patrons understood they were documenting divine intervention, but the intervention took forms that modern observers might recognize as extraterrestrial contact. Contemporary analysis using advanced imaging techniques reveals additional details invisible to casual observation. Infrared photography shows underlying sketches that include even more explicit technological elements, subsequently painted over or modified. X-ray analysis reveals original compositions that were altered to make unusual elements less prominent while preserving their essential characteristics. The Vatican's art restoration programs have uncovered numerous examples of such modifications. Paint layers added in later centuries often obscured original details that were too explicit for changing theological climates. Careful restoration sometimes reveals underlying images that show clear technological characteristics subsequently hidden beneath symbolic overlays. In the climate-controlled storage areas of Vatican museums, artworks not currently on display may contain even more explicit examples of anomalous imagery. Paintings and sculptures deemed too controversial for public exhibition might preserve visual evidence that clarifies the true nature of encounters documented in more subtle works. The aliens in early Christian art may represent humanity as first systematic visual documentation of ongoing contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. Artists working within religious frameworks preserved evidence of encounters that were too extraordinary for written records, but too significant for complete omission from the historical record. These visual testimonies wait in Vatican galleries and storage areas, patient as their painted subjects, preserving evidence that might eventually help humanity understand the contact with other intelligences has been occurring for centuries rather than remaining a future possibility. Deep beneath the Vatican, in chambers that appear on no architectural plans and are known only to a handful of individuals, with the highest security clearances, legends speak of a device that challenges human understanding of time itself. The chronovisor, as it has been whispered about in certain circles for decades, allegedly allows its operators to view events from the past and glimpse possibilities of the future through means that transcend conventional physics. The story begins with Father Pellegrino Ernetti, a Benedictine monk who served as an exorcist and scholar of ancient music at the prestigious San Giorgio Foundation in Venice. In the 1960s, Ernetti began making extraordinary claims to close associates about a project he had been developing in collaboration with some of the world's most brilliant scientists, including Nobel laureate Enrico Fermi and rocket pioneer Wernher von Braun. According to Ernetti's account, the team had discovered that sound and light waves, once generated, never truly disappear, but continue propagating through dimensions beyond normal perception. Using a complex array of antennae, recording equipment, and processing systems that incorporated technologies far in advance of their time, they had created a device capable of intercepting these lingering waves and reconstructing the events that generated them. The implications were staggering. If Ernetti's claims were accurate, the chronovisor could serve as a window into any moment of human history. The crucifixion of Christ could be observed directly. The actual words spoken by historical figures could be recorded. Mysteries that had puzzled scholars for centuries could be resolved through direct observation. But the device's capabilities apparently extended beyond mere historical viewing. Ernetti claimed that the same principles allowing observation of past events could be modified to glimpse probable futures, though with decreasing accuracy as the temporal distance increased. The future remained fluid, subject to change based on present actions. But certain major events cast shadows backward through time that the chronovisor could detect. Vatican officials reportedly learned of Ernetti's work through his ecclesiastical connections and immediately recognized both its potential value and its dangers. If such technology actually existed, it would provide unprecedented insight into religious history while potentially challenging fundamental doctrines about divine revelation and human free will. The Church moved quickly to assume control of the project and classify its results at the highest levels of secrecy. Ernetti allegedly used the device to witness Christ's crucifixion, producing a photograph that he claimed showed Jesus' actual face during his final moments. The image, which surfaced briefly before disappearing back into Vatican custody, sparked intense debate among experts who could neither definitively authenticate nor debunk its origin. More disturbing were Ernetti's private statements that the crucifixion he observed contained details that contradicted certain aspects of gospel accounts, raising theological questions too sensitive for public discussion. The monk also claimed to have observed numerous other historical events, from the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah to Napoleon's exile on Elba. Each observation reportedly yielded information that filled gaps in historical knowledge while sometimes contradicting accepted narratives. The Vatican found itself in possession of what amounted to an ultimate historical archive, but one too dangerous to reveal without careful consideration of its implications. Perhaps more significantly, the chronovisor allegedly revealed information about extraterrestrial contact throughout human history. Ernetti claimed to have observed encounters between humans and non-human entities extending back to prehistoric times. These observations suggested that contact had been occurring regularly, often during crucial periods of human development, and that many religious experiences throughout history actually represented interactions with advanced intelligences using technology to appear divine to primitive human observers. The device reportedly showed that biblical events like Moses' encounter with the burning bush, Ezekiel's vision of wheels within wheels, and the appearance of angels to various prophets were actually contact scenarios where extraterrestrial entities used advanced technology to communicate with selected human representatives. The religious interpretations were accurate in recognizing divine involvement, but incomplete in understanding the technological means through which such intervention occurred. Even more troubling for church authorities were the chronovisor's glimpses of future events. The device allegedly revealed a timeline in which extraterrestrial contact would become public knowledge within the early 21st century, forcing humanity to completely reconceptualize its place in the cosmos. The revelations would challenge existing religious, political, and social structures, requiring careful management to prevent civilizational collapse. According to Ernetti's account, Vatican officials used the device to develop strategies for managing this future disclosure. They observed multiple potential timelines and identified approaches that would minimize trauma while preserving essential human institutions. The gradual preparation visible in contemporary Vatican statements about extraterrestrial life reflects planning based on foreknowledge of coming revelations. The Church allegedly used the chronovisor to identify optimal timing for various disclosures, ensuring that humanity would be sufficiently prepared to handle revolutionary information. The device revealed that premature disclosure would cause social chaos, while excessive delay would result in traumatic revelation when contact could no longer be concealed. Vatican policymakers used this information to calibrate their preparation efforts for maximum effectiveness. Father Ernetti died in 1994, taking many secrets with him to the grave. Before his death, he made cryptic statements about his work being complete and the device being in proper hands for the challenges that lay ahead. He refused to provide additional technical details about the chronovisor's construction or to specify its location within Vatican facilities. The Vatican has never officially acknowledged the existence of such a device, but careful observers note curious correlations between Ernetti's alleged timeline observations and subsequent church policy developments. The increasing openness about extraterrestrial possibilities, the careful preparation of Catholic populations for paradigm-shifting revelations, and the sophisticated coordination with secular institutions all suggest foreknowledge that might require technological rather than purely intuitive sources. In the deepest vaults of Vatican City, where the most sensitive materials rest under security that rivals government intelligence facilities, the chronovisor may continue operating under the supervision of individuals who understand its implications for human civilization. The custodians of time may be using their unique perspective to guide humanity through transitions that will transform our species' understanding of its past, present, and future. Whether the device exists as Ernetti described, or represents an elaborate legend designed to conceal other sources of Vatican foreknowledge, its story illuminates the Church's sophisticated approach to managing revolutionary information. Time itself may be the ultimate Vatican secret, carefully guarded until humanity proves ready for the responsibilities that come with temporal insight. In the quiet corridors of the Gregorian University, where future priests study theology that will shape Catholic doctrine for generations, an unusual seminar occasionally appears on advanced curriculum schedules. Xenotheology, the theological implications of extraterrestrial intelligence. attracts only the most promising graduate students, those destined for careers in Vatican service or influential dioceses worldwide. The discussions that unfold behind closed doors address questions that would have been unthinkable mere decades ago, but now seem increasingly urgent. Do beings from other worlds possess souls? If extraterrestrial intelligences exist, how do they relate to God's plan for creation? Would they require salvation through Christ, or might their spiritual development follow entirely different paths? These are not abstract philosophical exercises, but practical theological problems that the Catholic Church has been quietly wrestling with for decades. The questions gained urgency as scientific discoveries made extraterrestrial life increasingly probable rather than merely possible. Vatican astronomers report regularly on exoplanet discoveries, many of which appear capable of supporting life. Radio telescope arrays scan the cosmos for signals that would confirm intelligent civilizations beyond Earth. The statistical likelihood that humanity is alone in the universe diminishes with each new discovery. Church theologians understand that contact with extraterrestrial intelligence would create the most significant theological crisis since Galileo proved that Earth was not the center of creation. Traditional Catholic anthropology places humanity at the pinnacle of God's creation, uniquely blessed with rational souls and destined for eternal communion with the divine. The existence of other intelligent species would challenge this special status and require fundamental reassessment of human uniqueness. The theological challenges become even more complex when considering the doctrine of the Incarnation. Catholic teaching holds that God became human in the person of Jesus Christ to redeem humanity from sin and restore the broken relationship between Creator and creation. But if multiple intelligent species exist throughout the universe, each presumably capable of sin and requiring redemption, how does Christ's earthly incarnation address their spiritual needs? Several theological schools have emerged within Vatican circles to address these questions. The exclusive incarnation theory maintains that Christ's salvation applies only to humanity, while other species would require their own incarnation events. This preserves human uniqueness while acknowledging that God, as redemptive plan, might operate differently across various worlds and species. The universal incarnation theory suggests that Christ as sacrifice transcends planetary boundaries and applies to all rational beings throughout creation. This interpretation emphasizes the cosmic scope of divine love while potentially diminishing human claims to special status. Proponents argue that God's infinite nature allows single incarnation events to have universal efficacy across space and time. A third approach, the multiple incarnation theory, proposes that God might become incarnate in different forms appropriate to each intelligent species. This would preserve the personal nature of divine revelation, while acknowledging that different biological and cultural contexts might require different modes of incarnation. Earth's Jesus Christ would represent one of many incarnation events occurring throughout cosmic history. These theological developments occur alongside practical preparation for potential contact scenarios. Vatican officials have reportedly developed protocols for responding to extraterrestrial communications, including guidelines for distinguishing between benevolent and potentially hostile contact. Church leaders understand that their response to confirmed extraterrestrial intelligence would influence the spiritual welfare of billions of Catholics worldwide. The preparation extends to missionary considerations. If contact reveals civilizations less advanced than humanity, traditional Catholic missionary impulses would require careful examination. Would human attempts to evangelize alien cultures represent spiritual outreach or cultural imperialism? How could the gospel message be translated across species boundaries? That might involve radically different cognitive structures and communication methods. Conversely, contact with more advanced civilizations might position humanity as the recipient rather than the source of spiritual wisdom. Catholic theologians have begun developing frameworks for evaluating alien spiritual teachings while preserving essential Christian doctrines. The challenge involves remaining open to new revelations while maintaining doctrinal integrity and institutional authority. Pope Francis has made several statements that suggest Vatican awareness of these challenges. His emphasis on God's mercy extending throughout creation, his comments about welcoming hypothetical Martian visitors into the Church, and his frequent references to caring for the common home of creation, all hint at theological frameworks it could accommodate extraterrestrial realities. The Pope's 2015 encyclical Laudato Si includes remarkable passages about humanity as relationship with other forms of life and creation, interconnectedness that could serve as foundation for expanded theological understanding. His references to the great cosmic communion and the network of relationships that encompasses all existence suggest awareness of realities that extend far beyond Earth's boundaries. Vatican astronomers have become increasingly explicit about these connections. Father Jose Gabriel Funes stated definitively that discovering extraterrestrial life would not diminish God, but rather demonstrate the vastness of divine creation. Father Guy Consolmagno has written extensively about the spiritual implications of astrobiology, arguing that Catholic theology is uniquely prepared to incorporate alien life into existing frameworks of understanding. These public statements reflect decades of private theological development within Vatican institutions. Jesuit schools worldwide have begun incorporating xenotheological considerations into their curriculum. Seminary training programs include modules on comparative religion that now extend beyond Earth-based traditions to consider how alien spirituality might manifest and interact with Catholic teaching. The theological work occurs alongside pastoral preparation. Vatican officials understand that confirmed extraterrestrial contact would create spiritual crises for believers who had assumed human uniqueness. Pastoral letters and educational materials have begun laying groundwork for revelation by emphasizing creation's vastness and humanity's role as stewards rather than masters of the universe. In the private archives of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, theological studies may exist that provide detailed analysis of specific contact scenarios. These documents, classified at levels that ensure access only to the highest church authorities, might include assessments of alien spiritual traditions, evaluation frameworks for extraterrestrial claims about divine revelation, and strategic plans for maintaining church unity during paradigm shifts that could fragment Christian civilization. The Vatican's approach to extraterrestrial salvation reflects institutional wisdom accumulated over 2 millennia of managing revolutionary knowledge. By developing theological frameworks in advance of public disclosure, the Church positions itself to provide spiritual guidance during humanity's most challenging transition. The questions that once seemed purely speculative may soon require immediate practical answers as the universe reveals secrets that transform human understanding of God, creation, and our place within the cosmic order. In the shadow of the white-robed pontiff who captures global attention, another figure wields power that flows through channels invisible to public scrutiny. The Superior General of the Society of Jesus, known in certain circles as the Black Pope IV, his simple dark cassock, and his order's historical reputation for political sophistication, commands a network of influence that spans continents and penetrates the highest levels of academic, scientific, and intelligence communities worldwide. The current holder of this position, Father Arturo Sosa, leads an organization of 16,000 highly educated priests who operate in over 100 countries. But the Jesuits are far more than ordinary religious missionaries. They are linguists, scientists, philosophers, and diplomats. They serve as university presidents, observatory directors, and advisors to heads of state. Most significantly for understanding the Vatican's relationship with extraterrestrial knowledge, they function as the Catholic Church's primary intelligence network. The Jesuit order was founded in 1540 by Ignatius of Loyola as the intellectual spearhead of the Counter-Reformation. From its inception, the Society of Jesus operated on multiple levels simultaneously. Publicly, Jesuits served as educators and missionaries, establishing schools and converting populations in distant lands. Privately, they gathered intelligence, conducted diplomatic missions, and managed sensitive information that never appeared in official church records. This dual nature made them ideal candidates for managing the Vatican's relationship with extraordinary phenomena that challenged conventional understanding. When reports of unusual aerial objects began reaching Rome through church networks in the 20th century, Jesuit astronomers and scholars were assigned to investigate and analyze the evidence. Their scientific credentials provided credibility, while their absolute loyalty to papal authority ensured discretion. A pattern of Jesuit involvement becomes apparent when examining key figures in Vatican UFO investigations. Father José Gabriel Funes, who made unprecedented statements about extraterrestrial life compatibility with Catholic doctrine, is a Jesuit astronomer. Father Guy Consol Magno, who has written extensively about astrobiology and alien contact scenarios, serves as a Jesuit scientist at the Vatican Observatory. Father Malachi Martin, who claimed knowledge of Vatican secrets regarding extraterrestrial contact, was a former Jesuit who maintained connections within the order. The Superior General's influence over these developments remains largely hidden from public view, but his authority shapes policy decisions that affect Catholic responses to potential extraterrestrial contact. When Jesuit astronomers speak publicly about their search for alien life, they do so with approval that flows through channels ultimately controlled by the Black Pope. When Vatican positions evolve toward greater openness about extraterrestrial possibilities, Jesuit analysis and recommendations inform those policy changes. The current Superior General, Father Arturo Sosa, assumed leadership in 2016 with a background that uniquely qualifies him for managing sensitive information. His doctorate in political science and his experience working in Venezuela during periods of political upheaval demonstrate sophisticated understanding of information management and social control. His academic specialization in political philosophy provides frameworks for understanding how revolutionary knowledge might be introduced to populations without causing destabilization. Sosa's public statements reveal carefully calculated preparation for paradigm shifts that could affect global civilization. His emphasis on discernment, the Jesuit practice of carefully evaluating complex situations before taking action, suggests institutional awareness that momentous decisions may soon be required. His frequent references to the need for universal perspective and cosmic consciousness hint at knowledge that extends beyond terrestrial concerns. The Superior General's influence operates through networks that extend far beyond Catholic institutions. Jesuit universities worldwide serve as nodes in an information-gathering system that monitors scientific, technological, and social developments relevant to church interests. Jesuit scientists working in secular institutions maintain connections that allow the Vatican access to research and discoveries before they reach public awareness. This network proved particularly valuable during the Cold War, when Jesuit connections provided the Vatican with intelligence about government, UFO investigations in both Western and Eastern Bloc countries. The Superior General coordinated church responses to these developments while maintaining the secrecy that preserved Vatican options for future disclosure decisions. Contemporary Jesuit operations suggest preparation for managing extraterrestrial contact scenarios that may be approaching rapidly. The Order's emphasis on education and cultural adaptation positions it to serve as intermediary between human civilization and alien intelligences that might require careful introduction to terrestrial societies. Jesuit linguists and anthropologists possess skills that could prove crucial for facilitating communication across species boundaries. The Superior General as authority over Jesuit activities worldwide means that contact protocols developed within the order carry institutional weight that could shape humanity as initial responses to confirmed extraterrestrial intelligence. Jesuit scholars have been developing frameworks for such encounters for decades, creating academic foundations that could support church leadership during civilization-altering revelations. Father Sosa's background in political science becomes particularly relevant when considering the social management challenges that would accompany extraterrestrial disclosure. His understanding of how revolutionary information affects political stability could inform Vatican decisions about timing and methodology for revelation. A gradual preparation visible in recent church statements about alien life reflects sophisticated political calculation that could originate from Jesuit analysis. The Order's global reach also provides the Vatican with early warning systems for developments that might affect disclosure timing. Jesuit missionaries in remote locations often encounter phenomena that secular authorities miss entirely. Their reports flow through ecclesiastical channels that operate independently of government oversight, providing the Superior General with intelligence that supplements official sources. In the private archives of the Jesuit Curia in Rome, documents may exist that reveal the true extent of the Order's involvement in extraterrestrial matters. Intelligence reports, analysis papers, and strategic assessments might await disclosure decisions that depend on global readiness rather than institutional courage. The Black Pope's influence over these materials could prove crucial for understanding how the Catholic Church has prepared for humanity's most significant transition. The Superior General of the Society of Jesus wields power that operates in shadows cast by more visible church authorities. His influence shapes decisions about extraterrestrial knowledge that could transform human civilization. As the universe prepares to reveal secrets that will challenge every assumption about humanity's place in creation, the Black Pope and his network of highly educated, absolutely loyal priests may hold keys that unlock humanity's cosmic future. The final book of Christian scripture opens with a vision so alien to human experience that interpreters have struggled for 2 millennia to decode its meaning. John of Patmos, exiled on a barren island in the Aegean Sea, claimed to receive revelations about the end times that challenge conventional understanding of reality itself. His descriptions of cosmic warfare, technological marvels, and entities from beyond normal perception read less like traditional prophecy than like a first-century attempt to describe encounters with advanced extraterrestrial intelligences. The opening vision establishes the otherworldly nature of John's experience. He describes hearing a voice like a trumpet that commands attention through technological rather than purely supernatural means. The source of this voice appears as a figure like a son of man, but possessing characteristics that transcend human limitations: eyes like blazing fire, feet like burnished bronze, and a voice like rushing waters. The description suggests an entity using advanced technology to appear in forms that primitive human observers could comprehend while maintaining, obviously, non-human capabilities. The throne room vision of Revelation chapter 4 provides even more explicit descriptions of advanced technology. John witnesses a throne surrounded by 24 other thrones, occupied beings clothed in white robes and wearing golden crowns. Before the central throne, 7 lamps burn, described as the 7 spirits of God, but resembling technological installations rather than purely spiritual manifestations. 4 living creatures surround the throne, covered with eyes in front and in back, suggesting sophisticated surveillance capabilities rather than natural biological features. The creatures themselves, one like a lion, one like an ox, one with a human face, and one like a flying eagle, might represent different types of beings or vehicles rather than symbolic representations. Their ability to move instantly and their constant vigilance suggest technological rather than biological capabilities. Their continuous communication with the central authority implies a command and control structure consistent with advanced civilization rather than purely spiritual hierarchy. The sealed scroll that drives much of Revelation's narrative introduces concepts that align closely with modern understanding of information storage and security protocols. The scroll is sealed with 7 seals that must be opened in sequence, suggesting advanced encryption or security measures designed to prevent unauthorized access to sensitive information. Only one entity, described as a lamb that was slain, possesses the authorization codes necessary to access the data. The opening of each seal triggers specific events on Earth, suggesting remote monitoring and intervention capabilities that could represent advanced technology rather than supernatural intervention. The first 4 seals release beings on colored horses, white, red, black, and pale, that bring conquest, war, famine, and death. These could represent different phases of extraterrestrial intervention in human development, with each phase designed to accomplish specific objectives in humanity's evolution. The 6th seal produces cosmic phenomena that challenge conventional interpretation. The sun becomes black, the moon appears blood red, stars fall to Earth, and the sky rolls up like a scroll. Rather than literal astronomical events, these descriptions might represent technological demonstrations designed to capture human attention and demonstrate capabilities beyond terrestrial science. The imagery suggests controlled manipulation of environmental conditions rather than natural catastrophes. The 7 trumpet judgments that follow introduce even more explicitly technological elements. The first trumpet brings hail and fire mixed with blood, possibly describing atmospheric phenomena caused by advanced propulsion systems or terraforming technologies. The second trumpet describes something like a huge mountain, all ablaze being thrown into the sea, potentially a massive spacecraft or technological installation impacting terrestrial environments. The third trumpet involves a great star called wormwood that falls from heaven and poisons water sources. Modern readers might recognize this as describing nuclear contamination or chemical pollution caused by crashed or deliberately deployed extraterrestrial technology. The fourth trumpet affects celestial illumination, dimming the sun, moon, and stars by 1/3, possibly representing atmospheric modifications or the deployment of technology that affects light transmission. The fifth trumpet unleashes what John calls locusts from an opened abyss, but his description bears little resemblance to ordinary insects. These entities wear crowns, possess human-like faces, have hair like women, teeth like lions, and breastplates like iron. They produce sounds like thunder and possess stingers that can torment humans for 5 months without killing them. The description sounds remarkably like armored beings using advanced weapons designed for crowd control rather than lethal force. Even more explicitly technological are the 200 million mounted troops described in the sixth trumpet judgment. John provides detailed specifications that read like technical documentation. The riders wear breastplates of fiery red, dark blue, and yellow like sulfur. Their horses have heads like lions and tails like serpents, with heads that can inflict injury. Fire, smoke, and sulfur emerge from their mouths. Descriptions that could easily describe advanced military vehicles rather than biological entities. The final chapters of Revelation introduce concepts that align with contemporary understanding of advanced civilizations and their relationship with developing worlds. The New Jerusalem descends from heaven as a massive cubic structure measuring approximately 1,500 miles in each dimension, a city-sized installation that represents the ultimate merger of human and extraterrestrial civilizations. The description of this cosmic city includes technological details that anticipate modern understanding of advanced engineering. The walls are made of jasper, the foundations are precious stones, and the streets are pure gold, materials that suggest construction techniques beyond current human capabilities. The city requires no sun or moon because its illumination comes from the glory of God, possibly describing energy generation technologies that transcend current understanding. Most significantly, the New Jerusalem serves as a meeting point between Earth and cosmos, where the nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their splendor into it. This suggests a future scenario where humanity joins a larger galactic community, participating in commerce and cultural exchange with civilizations from throughout the universe. The Vatican's approach to revelation has always emphasized symbolic interpretation over literal reading, possibly because church authorities understand that the text describes realities that humanity was not prepared to comprehend directly. Recent statements from Vatican officials about extraterrestrial life compatibility with Christian doctrine suggest growing readiness to consider more literal interpretations of John's cosmic visions. In the deepest archives of the Apostolic Palace, scholarly analyses of Revelation may exist that decode the text's technological elements in detail. These studies, too sensitive for public release, might provide roadmaps for understanding how extraterrestrial contact will unfold and what role the Catholic Church will play in humanity's transition to cosmic citizenship. The cosmic keys hidden within Revelation may unlock humanity's future rather than merely predicting its end. John's visions might document the planned evolution of human civilization from planetary isolation to galactic participation, with the Church serving as guide and intermediary during the most challenging transition in human history. At the bottom of the world, where ice sheets stretch beyond horizons and temperatures plummet to levels that can kill exposed humans within minutes, an unlikely presence maintains operations that have puzzled observers for decades. The Vatican, an institution more commonly associated with Mediterranean warmth and ancient marble, has sponsored research expeditions to Antarctica that seem to extend far beyond publicly acknowledged scientific objectives. The connection begins with Vatican observatory initiatives that require astronomical observation from the southern hemisphere. Antarctic locations offer advantages for certain types of celestial observation due to their stable atmospheric conditions and minimal light pollution. Vatican astronomers have participated in international research programs that establish temporary observatories on the continent during the austral summer months. But the scope of Vatican involvement appears to extend beyond conventional astronomical research. Church-sponsored expeditions have explored regions of Antarctica that hold particular significance for understanding Earth's ancient history. These expeditions focus on areas where geological evidence suggests dramatic environmental changes that might correlate with events described in religious texts or preserved in church archives. Father Antonio de Nicolo, a Jesuit geologist who has participated in multiple Antarctic expeditions, made cryptic references to discoveries that challenge conventional understanding of human history and provide evidence for events preserved in biblical narrative. His published research focuses on ice core analysis and geological surveys, but his private correspondence suggests awareness of findings that remain classified at levels beyond normal scientific confidentiality. The Vatican's Antarctic interests intensified following reports of unusual discoveries in regions claimed by various nations under the Antarctic Treaty. Satellite imagery revealed geometric formations beneath ice sheets that appear too regular to represent natural geological processes. Ground-penetrating radar detected structures that suggest construction techniques beyond known historical capabilities. Core samples contain materials that resist explanation through conventional geological processes. These discoveries gained urgency during the 1990s, when climate change began accelerating ice sheet melting and potentially exposing previously hidden formations. Vatican officials reportedly coordinated with international research organizations to ensure that any extraordinary discoveries would be documented and preserved through proper ecclesiastical channels rather than being lost to uncontrolled public disclosure. The Church's involvement reflects institutional experience with managing extraordinary archaeological discoveries. Vatican protocols for handling sensitive archaeological evidence, developed through centuries of excavation in the Holy Land and throughout Europe, provide frameworks for documenting and preserving discoveries that might challenge conventional historical narratives while avoiding premature public revelation. Contemporary Vatican expeditions to Antarctica reportedly focus on specific coordinates that correlate with references preserved in ancient church documents. Medieval manuscripts contain descriptions of lands beyond the known world, where extraordinary events occurred during biblical times. These references, previously dismissed as allegorical, have gained significance as satellite surveys reveal formations that match descriptions preserved in archived texts. The most intriguing Vatican Antarctic operations center on regions where electromagnetic anomalies suggest the presence of artificial structures beneath ice sheets. These areas produce readings consistent with advanced technology rather than natural geological formations. Vatican research teams work alongside secular scientists to investigate these anomalies while maintaining control over information that might prove too sensitive for immediate public release. Reports from Antarctic expeditions describe discoveries that include architectural remains of clearly artificial origin, technological artifacts that resist analysis using conventional methods, and organic remains that suggest life forms distinct from known terrestrial species. These findings, if authentic, would revolutionize understanding of Earth's history and humanity's development within broader cosmic contexts. The Vatican's response to such discoveries reflects sophisticated understanding of their implications for religious doctrine and social stability. Rather than suppressing evidence or rushing toward public disclosure, church officials have reportedly established secure facilities for analyzing extraordinary materials while developing theological frameworks that could accommodate paradigm-shifting revelations. Vatican Antarctic operations also reportedly include collaborative arrangements with intelligence agencies from multiple nations that maintain research presence on the continent. These partnerships ensure that extraordinary discoveries are managed through international coordination rather than unilateral national decisions that might destabilize global political balance. The theological implications of Antarctic discoveries occupy increasing attention within Vatican scholarly circles. If ancient civilizations possessed advanced technology that exceeded known historical capabilities, traditional understanding of human development would require fundamental revision. If evidence emerges of non-human intelligences operating on Earth during historical periods, religious concepts about divine intervention and angelic visitation might need literal rather than purely metaphorical interpretation. Pope Francis has made several references to humanity as responsibility for caring for the entire Earth and understanding our place within creation as full scope. It could reflect awareness of discoveries that extend human history beyond conventional timelines. His emphasis on environmental stewardship gains additional significance when viewed as preparation for revelations about Earth as ancient past and its relationship with cosmic developments. Contemporary Vatican expeditions to Antarctica allegedly include advanced archaeological techniques that can analyze buried structures without disturbing ice coverage that protects them from environmental exposure. These non-invasive investigation methods allow documentation of extraordinary findings while preserving their integrity for future analysis when technological capabilities advance sufficiently to enable more detailed study. In the climate-controlled archives of Vatican secret archives, reports from Antarctic expeditions may document discoveries that challenge every assumption about human history and Earth as relationship with extraterrestrial intelligence. These documents, classified at levels that ensure access only to the highest church authorities, might await disclosure decisions that depend on humanity's readiness for revolutionary knowledge rather than institutional timelines. The Vatican's Antarctic connections suggest that the frozen continent holds keys to understanding humanity as past that could reshape its future. As climate change continues accelerating ice sheet melting, discoveries that have been preserved in frozen silence for millennia may soon emerge into daylight, forcing revelations that transform human understanding of its place in cosmic history. The bottom of the world may hold the top secrets of human civilization, carefully documented and preserved by an institution that understands the weight of knowledge that could either enlighten or traumatize human consciousness, depending on how skillfully its revelation is managed. In the highest echelons of global power, where decisions shape the course of human civilization, an extraordinary coordination has been quietly developing for decades. Government officials, military leaders, intelligence agencies, and scientific institutions find themselves working alongside an ancient institution that has weathered every crisis in human history. The Vatican's role in potential extraterrestrial disclosure represents one of the most sophisticated information management operations ever attempted. The partnership began during the Cold War, when both secular and religious authorities recognized that confirmation of extraterrestrial intelligence would create challenges that no single institution could manage alone. Governments possess technological resources and intelligence gathering capabilities, but they lacked the social infrastructure necessary to maintain stability during civilization-altering revelations. The Catholic Church offered exactly what secular authorities needed: a global network of trusted communicators, centuries of experience managing revolutionary knowledge, and institutional credibility that transcended national boundaries. The initial arrangements were informal, developing through diplomatic channels and personal relationships between officials who understood the magnitude of what they were managing. Cardinal Agostino Casaroli, Vatican Secretary of State under Pope John Paul II, reportedly met regularly with intelligence officials from multiple nations to coordinate approaches to UFO investigations and potential disclosure scenarios. These meetings established protocols that continue influencing contemporary policy. Information about extraordinary discoveries would be shared through secure channels that bypassed normal governmental oversight. Religious and secular authorities would coordinate their public statements to avoid contradictions that might undermine public confidence. Disclosure decisions would be made collectively rather than unilaterally, ensuring that no single institution bore sole responsibility for managing humanity's response to revolutionary knowledge. The Vatican's unique position in these arrangements reflects institutional advantages that secular authorities lack. The Church operates in virtually every country on Earth, providing communication networks that span cultural and political boundaries. Vatican diplomacy enjoys respect from leaders across religious and ideological spectrums. Most importantly, the Church possesses experience managing information that challenges fundamental human assumptions about reality and purpose. Contemporary evidence of this coordination appears in the remarkable synchronization between Vatican statements about extraterrestrial life and secular scientific developments. When NASA announces discoveries of potentially habitable exoplanets, Vatican astronomers immediately provide theological context that prepares Catholic populations for the implications. When government officials hint at classified information about UFO encounters, Church leaders offer pastoral guidance about maintaining faith during paradigm shifts. The coordination extends to timing decisions about specific revelations. The Pentagon's recent release of military videos showing unidentified aerial phenomena occurred simultaneously with expanded Vatican statements about the theological compatibility of alien life. This synchronization suggests careful planning designed to ease public transition toward acceptance of extraordinary realities. Pope Francis has played a particularly crucial role in disclosure preparation through statements that gradually expand Catholic understanding of creation s scope. His 2015 encyclical Laudato Si includes passages about cosmic interconnectedness and humanity's responsibility within the community of life that could easily accommodate extraterrestrial intelligence. His casual comments about baptizing hypothetical Martian visitors normalize the concept of alien contact for Catholic audiences. The Pope's approach reflects sophisticated understanding of how revolutionary information must be introduced gradually to avoid traumatic social disruption. His emphasis on mercy, inclusion, and cosmic perspective prepares Catholic populations for revelations that might otherwise challenge their fundamental beliefs about human uniqueness and divine purpose. Vatican participation in disclosure planning reportedly includes detailed analysis of optimal timing for various levels of revelation. Church researchers have studied historical precedents for managing paradigm shifts, examining how previous revolutionary discoveries were successfully integrated into human consciousness without causing civilizational collapse. These studies inform contemporary decisions about when and how to reveal specific types of information. The Church's Global Intelligence Network provides early warning systems for developments that might affect disclosure timing. Missionary reports about unusual phenomena, academic research at Catholic universities, and diplomatic intelligence flowing through Vatican channels all contribute to assessments about public readiness for extraordinary revelations. This information supplements secular intelligence sources and helps ensure that disclosure decisions reflect global, rather than merely Western perspectives. The Vatican's role also includes developing theological frameworks that will support humanity during post-disclosure adjustment periods. Vatican theologians have spent decades creating doctrinal foundations that can accommodate extraterrestrial intelligence without undermining essential Christian teachings. These frameworks will provide spiritual guidance for believers who struggle to reconcile alien contact with their religious understanding. International coordination of disclosure efforts faces significant challenges from competing national interests and institutional rivalries. The Vatican's neutral status and moral authority position it to serve as mediator between nations that might otherwise compete for advantage from extraordinary discoveries. Church diplomacy could prove crucial for maintaining international cooperation during humanity's most challenging transition. The timing of eventual disclosure appears to depend on multiple factors that secular and religious authorities monitor continuously. Public opinion polls about extraterrestrial belief, technological developments that make concealment increasingly difficult, geopolitical stability that affects timing decisions, and social indicators that suggest readiness for paradigm shifts all influence when revelations might occur. Current trends suggest that disclosure may be approaching more rapidly than previously anticipated. The proliferation of private space exploration, advances in astronomical observation capabilities, and increasing government transparency about UFO investigations create pressures that make indefinite concealment increasingly difficult to maintain. The Vatican's role in managing these pressures reflects institutional wisdom accumulated over 2 millennia of navigating revolutionary changes. The Church has survived the fall of empires, scientific revolutions, and social upheavals that destroyed other institutions. Its approach to extraterrestrial disclosure draws on this experience while adapting to challenges that exceed anything in human history. In the private chambers of the Apostolic Palace, where papal decisions shape the spiritual direction of over 1 billion, Catholics' conversations about disclosure timing and methodology occur regularly among individuals who understand they are managing humanity's transition into a larger cosmic community. Their decisions will influence how successfully human civilization adapts to the most significant revelation in its history. The Vatican's role in disclosure represents the culmination of centuries of institutional development that positioned the Church to serve as humanity's guide during its greatest challenge and greatest opportunity. When the moment arrives for full revelation, the ancient institution that has shepherded human souls for 2,000 years will help shepherd human consciousness into cosmic maturity. In the quiet chapel of the Vatican Observatory, where Jesuit astronomers gather each morning for prayer before beginning their search among distant galaxies, an extraordinary transformation of human consciousness unfolds with each new discovery. As telescopes reveal potentially habitable worlds orbiting alien suns as radio arrays, listen for signals that might carry messages from cosmic neighbors as space probes venture toward destinations that could harbor life. The very foundations of faith expand to accommodate possibilities that would have been unthinkable mere decades ago. The implications challenge every assumption about humanity's relationship with the divine. For 2 millennia, Christian theology has developed around the premise that humans occupy a unique position in God's creation. Rational beings blessed with immortal souls destined for eternal communion with their Creator, the pinnacle of divine artistry in a universe crafted specifically for their spiritual development. But what if humanity represents just one note in a vast cosmic symphony of intelligence? What if rational souls inhabit countless worlds throughout the galaxy? What if God's creative love extends far beyond Earth as boundaries to embrace civilizations that surpass human understanding in wisdom, technology, and spiritual development? These questions no longer represent idle speculation, but urgent theological challenges that Catholic scholars address with increasing sophistication. The discoveries of contemporary astronomy make extraterrestrial life not just possible, but statistically probable. The Vatican's own observatories participate in research programs designed to detect biosignatures in alien atmospheres and identify worlds where complex life might flourish. Father Guy Consolmagno, a Jesuit astronomer who serves as director of the Vatican Observatory, has written extensively about the theological implications of this expanding cosmic perspective. His work explores how Catholic doctrine might evolve to accommodate the discovery of alien intelligence without losing essential truths about divine love and human purpose. The universe is vast beyond human comprehension, Consolmagno explains, and to limit God's creative power to Earth alone would be to diminish our understanding of divine infinite nature. His theological framework suggests that discovering life on other worlds would enhance rather than diminish appreciation for God's creative scope and artistic variety. This perspective represents a dramatic evolution from historical Catholic anthropocentrism. Medieval theology placed Earth at the physical center of creation, with humanity as its spiritual pinnacle. Even after Galileo proved that Earth orbited the Sun rather than vice versa, Catholic teaching continued emphasizing human uniqueness as rational beings specially created for divine relationship. Contemporary Vatican theology moves boldly beyond these limitations toward cosmic perspectives that anticipate rather than merely react to extraordinary discoveries. Pope Francis has made remarkable statements about welcoming hypothetical alien visitors into the Church, suggesting institutional readiness for contact scenarios that would have been inconceivable to previous generations of Catholic leadership. The theological challenges become particularly complex when considering the doctrine of salvation. Catholic teaching holds that Jesus Christ died and rose again to redeem humanity from sin and restore broken relationship with God. But if multiple intelligent species exist throughout the universe, each presumably capable of moral choice and spiritual development, how does Christ's earthly sacrifice address their needs? Vatican theologians have developed several frameworks for addressing these questions. The universal incarnation theory suggests that Christ's redemptive work transcends planetary boundaries and applies to all rational beings throughout creation. This interpretation emphasizes the cosmic scope of divine love while maintaining the centrality of Christ as sacrifice for universal salvation. An alternative approach, the multiple incarnation theory, proposes that God might become incarnate in forms appropriate to different species and cultures. This would preserve the personal nature of divine revelation, while acknowledging that alien civilizations might require incarnation events tailored to their specific biological and cultural contexts. Perhaps most intriguingly, some Vatican scholars explore the possibility that extraterrestrial contact might provide new insights into divine nature and purpose. If alien civilizations possess spiritual wisdom that exceeds human understanding, their perspectives might enhance rather than challenge essential Christian truths about love, compassion, and cosmic purpose. This approach requires extraordinary theological sophistication and pastoral sensitivity. The Church must remain open to new revelations while preserving doctrinal integrity and institutional authority. Vatican officials understand that their response to confirmed extraterrestrial intelligence will influence the spiritual welfare of billions of Catholics who look to Church teaching for guidance during civilization-altering transitions. The practical implications extend beyond theological speculation to immediate pastoral concerns. How should priests counsel parishioners who struggle to reconcile alien contact with their religious beliefs? How might Catholic education adapt to include cosmic perspectives on creation and salvation? How could traditional devotional practices evolve to accommodate expanded understanding of God's universal presence? Vatican institutions have begun addressing these challenges through curriculum development at Catholic universities, pastoral training programs for clergy, and educational materials designed to prepare Catholic populations for paradigm shifts that could occur within their lifetimes. The Church approaches these preparations with characteristic patience, understanding that successful adaptation requires gradual rather than sudden change. The transformation also involves practical considerations about potential missionary activity. If contact reveals civilizations less advanced than humanity, traditional Catholic impulses toward evangelization would require careful examination. How could gospel messages be translated across species boundaries? What would constitute appropriate methods for sharing Christian truth with alien cultures? Conversely, contact with more advanced civilizations might position humanity as students rather than teachers in cosmic classroom settings. Catholic theology would need frameworks for evaluating alien spiritual traditions while maintaining essential Christian insights about divine love and human dignity. These developments occur within broader Catholic evolution toward cosmic consciousness that encompasses environmental stewardship, social justice, and global cooperation. Pope Francis' encyclical Laudato Si emphasizes interconnectedness and common responsibility that could easily extend beyond Earth's boundaries to include relationships with extraterrestrial neighbors. The Pope's vision of integral ecology recognizes that spiritual, social, and environmental challenges require holistic approaches that transcend traditional boundaries between sacred and secular concerns. This perspective provides foundation for theological frameworks that could accommodate alien contact within existing Catholic commitment to universal love and cosmic responsibility. In the private studies of Vatican theologians, where the most sensitive doctrinal questions receive careful analysis away from public scrutiny, the groundwork continues for managing humanity's spiritual transition into galactic citizenship. These scholars understand they are preparing for revelations that could either strengthen or shatter human faith, depending on how skillfully their implications are interpreted and communicated. Faith beyond Earth requires expansion rather than abandonment of essential spirituals. The God who created Earth's beauty and complexity could certainly have crafted similar wonders throughout the cosmos. The love that motivated Christ's sacrifice for humanity would naturally extend to embrace all rational beings capable of receiving divine grace. The hope that sustains human souls through life's challenges would gain rather than lose meaning within cosmic contexts that reveal creation's true scope and glory. The quiet chapel of the Vatican Observatory continues hosting morning prayers where Jesuit astronomers prepare their souls for discoveries that might transform human understanding of God's infinite creativity. Their faith has already expanded to encompass possibilities that their predecessors could never have imagined. As the universe prepares to reveal secrets that will challenge every assumption about humanity's place in creation, their expanded faith provides foundation for humanity's spiritual journey into cosmic maturity. In the marble corridors of Vatican City, where every whispered conversation echoes with the weight of centuries, an extraordinary burden rests upon the shoulders of men who have dedicated their lives to spiritual service. They move through their daily routines, celebrating Mass, conducting meetings, offering pastoral guidance, while carrying knowledge that could transform human civilization or potentially destroy it. The weight of silence presses down upon them with each passing day, growing heavier as scientific discoveries make concealment increasingly difficult to maintain. The psychological toll of managing revolutionary secrets becomes apparent in the carefully measured words of Vatican officials who speak about extraterrestrial possibilities. Their statements reveal institutional awareness of implications that extend far beyond simple scientific curiosity. When church leaders discuss the theological compatibility of alien life, they do so with the gravity of individuals who understand they are preparing humanity for revelations that will challenge every assumption about its place in creation. This burden extends beyond individual conscience to institutional responsibility for managing information that could either elevate human consciousness or trigger civilizational collapse. The Catholic Church has survived nearly 2,000 years by carefully calibrating the timing of revolutionary disclosure to match humanity's capacity for assimilating paradigm-shifting knowledge. The approach that guided church responses to scientific revolution, political upheaval, and social transformation now faces its ultimate test in managing humanity's introduction to cosmic citizenship. The theological challenges alone would justify extreme caution. If extraterrestrial contact confirms that humanity is not unique in possessing rational souls, traditional Catholic anthropology requires fundamental revision. If alien civilizations demonstrate spiritual development that surpasses human understanding, the Church's teaching authority faces challenges that exceed anything in its history. If contact reveals that biblical accounts of divine intervention actually documented extraterrestrial encounters, the foundations of faith would require reconstruction rather than mere adjustment. But the social implications present even greater risks. Human civilization has organized itself around assumptions of terrestrial isolation and species uniqueness. Political systems, economic structures, religious institutions, and cultural identities all rest on foundations that extraterrestrial contact would severely undermine. The revelation that humanity has been monitored, guided, or influenced by non-human intelligences could trigger responses ranging from religious revival to complete social breakdown. Vatican officials understand these risks through institutional memory that spans centuries of managing revolutionary knowledge. The Church's experience with scientific discoveries that challenged geocentric cosmology, biological theories that questioned human origins, and archaeological findings that complicated biblical chronology provides templates for understanding how paradigm shifts affect human consciousness. But the scale of extraterrestrial revelation dwarfs all previous challenges. The secrecy also reflects pastoral concern for believers who have built their spiritual lives around assumptions that would be challenged by alien contact. Millions of Catholics find meaning, purpose, and hope in traditional teachings about human uniqueness and divine special concern for terrestrial creation. Sudden revelation that humanity occupies a modest position in a galaxy filled with intelligent life could trigger spiritual crises that overwhelm existing support systems. The Church's gradual approach to disclosure preparation reflects sophisticated understanding of how revolutionary knowledge must be introduced to avoid traumatic disruption. Vatican statements about extraterrestrial possibilities have evolved slowly from denial through grudging acceptance toward active anticipation. This progression allows Catholic populations to adjust gradually to expanded cosmic perspectives without experiencing the shock that would accompany sudden revelation. Yet the weight of silence grows heavier as external pressures make indefinite concealment increasingly difficult to maintain. Private space exploration, advanced astronomical observation, government transparency initiatives, and proliferating UFO reports create multiple vectors for potential disclosure that the Vatican cannot control directly. Church officials must balance their preference for careful preparation against the possibility that events might force premature revelation. The burden also includes responsibility for coordinating with secular authorities who face similar challenges in managing potentially explosive information. The Vatican's role in international disclosure planning requires constant communication with government officials, intelligence agencies, and scientific institutions that possess different pieces of the same extraordinary puzzle. Maintaining coordination while preserving institutional autonomy demands diplomatic skills that few organizations possess. Individual Vatican officials bear personal costs for maintaining silence about knowledge that could benefit humanity if properly revealed. Scientists who discover evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence must continue their research while concealing conclusions that contradict public statements. Theologians who develop frameworks for understanding alien contact cannot share insights that might comfort believers struggling with cosmic questions. Diplomats who coordinate disclosure planning cannot acknowledge the existence of such coordination without compromising operational security. The psychological pressure intensifies as these individuals witness human suffering that might be alleviated through revelation of extraterrestrial knowledge. Advanced alien civilizations might possess solutions to environmental crises, medical conditions, or technological challenges that currently seem insurmountable. The moral burden of withholding such information, while maintaining institutional policies of gradual disclosure, creates internal conflicts that require extraordinary spiritual discipline to manage. Yet Vatican officials also understand the historical precedent for patience in managing revolutionary knowledge. The Church's approach to Galileo's discoveries, though ultimately vindicated, required centuries to unfold completely. Darwin's evolutionary theories took decades to integrate into Catholic teaching. Archaeological discoveries that illuminated biblical contexts required careful evaluation before acceptance. Each case demonstrates that premature disclosure of challenging information often creates more problems than solutions. The weight of silence may ultimately serve humanity's larger interests despite its personal and institutional costs. If extraterrestrial contact requires careful preparation to avoid traumatic disruption, the Vatican's patient approach could prove essential for maintaining social stability during civilization's most challenging transition. The burden that Church officials carry today might prevent far greater suffering that could result from poorly managed revelation. Contemporary Vatican policies suggest that the period of silence may be approaching its end. Increased openness about extraterrestrial possibilities, expanded coordination with secular authorities, and accelerated preparation of Catholic populations all indicate institutional readiness for disclosure scenarios that seemed impossible mere decades ago. The weight of silence that has pressed down upon Vatican officials for generations might soon be lifted as humanity proves ready for knowledge that has been carefully preserved until the proper moment for revelation. In the private chambers of the Apostolic Palace, where the most sensitive decisions affecting human civilization are made in prayer-filled solitude, papal advisors continue weighing the costs of silence against the risks of revelation. Their burden represents one of the most profound moral challenges in human history, determining when revolutionary knowledge serves rather than threatens the spiritual welfare of the human family they have sworn to shepherd through every crisis and every opportunity that the cosmos might provide. The question hangs in the air like incense in an ancient cathedral, permeating every shadowed corner of human consciousness where wonder meets possibility. As dawn breaks over the 7 hills of Rome, casting golden light across marble facades that have witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the eternal city awakens to another day of carefully guarded secrets. But what if, in the deepest vaults beneath St. Peter's Basilica, evidence rests that would transform human understanding of everything we thought we knew about our place in the infinite cosmos? The implications ripple outward like stones dropped into still water, each wave reshaping the landscape of human possibility. If the Vatican, that ancient institution which has shepherded souls for 2 millennia, which has preserved knowledge through dark ages and guided civilizations through their most challenging transitions, truly possesses proof that we are not alone, then every assumption about humanity's past, present, and future requires fundamental reconsideration. The evidence has been accumulating for centuries in patterns too consistent to ignore. 800 years of astronomical observations documenting phenomena that challenge conventional explanation. Medieval manuscripts preserving accounts of encounters with beings from beyond the stars. Renaissance art depicting technological marvels that anticipate contemporary understanding of advanced propulsion systems. modern Vatican statements preparing Catholic populations for paradigm shifts that seemed impossible mere decades ago. Each piece of the puzzle, examined individually, might be dismissed as coincidence, misinterpretation, or wishful thinking. But assembled together, they form a mosaic that suggests something extraordinary has been occurring in the shadows of official history. The Catholic Church, with its global network of observers, its sophisticated methodology for evaluating extraordinary claims, and its institutional commitment to preserving truth, regardless of its implications, would be uniquely positioned to document and verify contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. The Vatican's evolution toward accepting alien possibilities reflects institutional wisdom that operates on timescales measured in centuries rather than years. The same organization that required nearly 400 years to acknowledge that Galileo was correct about Earth orbiting the Sun now speaks openly about the theological compatibility of extraterrestrial life. This transformation suggests preparation for revelations that would dwarf the Copernican revolution in their impact on human consciousness. But why maintain secrecy if such proof exists? The answer may lie in the Church's deep understanding of how revolutionary knowledge affects human civilization. History demonstrates that paradigm shifts require careful management to prevent social disruption that could cause more harm than the knowledge itself provides benefit. The revelation that humanity shares the universe with advanced intelligences would challenge religious beliefs, political systems, and cultural identities in ways that could trigger civilizational collapse if handled poorly. The Vatican's approach to managing such knowledge would reflect institutional expertise accumulated through 2,000 years of navigating revolutionary changes. Gradual preparation rather than sudden revelation. Theological frameworks developed in advance of disclosure to provide spiritual guidance during traumatic transitions. Coordination with secular authorities to ensure that revelation serves rather than threatens human welfare. Yet external pressures may be making indefinite concealment increasingly difficult to maintain. Private space exploration ventures beyond government control. Advanced telescopes detecting signs of life in alien atmospheres. Military acknowledgement of encounters with objects that demonstrate capabilities beyond known technology. The convergence of these developments creates multiple vectors for potential disclosure that no single institution can control indefinitely. The moment of revelation, when it comes, might arrive not through careful institutional planning, but through circumstances that force immediate acknowledgement of realities that can no longer be concealed. A radio telescope detecting unmistakable signs of artificial transmission. A space probe discovering structures on Mars or Europa that clearly indicate non-human construction. A mass sighting event that involves thousands of witnesses and multiple recording devices. When such revelation occurs, humanity will need institutions capable of providing guidance during the most challenging transition in its history. The Vatican's combination of global reach, moral authority, and experience managing revolutionary knowledge positions it to serve as crucial intermediary between human civilization and cosmic realities that exceed current understanding. The theological implications would prove manageable within frameworks that Vatican scholars have been developing for decades. God's creative love extending throughout the cosmos. Christ's redemptive sacrifice applying to all rational beings capable of receiving divine grace. The Church's mission expanding to encompass pastoral care for humanity's transition into galactic citizenship. But the social and psychological challenges would require unprecedented coordination between religious and secular authorities. Educational systems would need rapid adaptation to cosmic perspectives. Mental health services would face demand from individuals struggling to assimilate paradigm shifts that challenge fundamental assumptions about reality and purpose. Political leaders would need guidance for maintaining stability, while acknowledging that humanity's position in the universe differs dramatically from previous understanding. The Vatican's role in such transitions would draw upon institutional strengths, that have enabled survival through every crisis in human history. The Church has weathered the fall of Rome, the challenges of the Reformation, the upheavals of scientific revolution, and the traumas of global warfare. Its approach to extraterrestrial revelation would reflect wisdom gained through centuries of shepherding human souls through their darkest moments and greatest opportunities. The proof, if it exists, might already be emerging through channels too subtle for casual observation, but obvious to those who understand the patterns of institutional disclosure. Vatican astronomers speaking with increasing certainty about extraterrestrial possibilities. Papal statements preparing Catholic populations for cosmic perspectives. Theological conferences addressing questions that would be purely academic unless contact were anticipated within foreseeable timeframes. The ancient institution that preserved classical learning through barbarian invasions, that maintained libraries while civilizations collapsed, that carefully documented every significant event in human history, would certainly have preserved evidence of humanity's most extraordinary encounters. The question is not whether such proof exists, but whether humanity has developed sufficient wisdom to handle its implications responsibly. In the quiet hours before dawn, when Vatican City rests in peaceful silence and the weight of accumulated centuries presses down upon ancient stones, the answer to our cosmic loneliness may lie waiting in climate-controlled chambers beneath the world's most sacred spaces. The proof may already exist, carefully preserved by an institution that understands the difference between knowledge and wisdom, between revelation and preparation, between truth and timing. What if the Vatican holds proof of aliens? Perhaps the more profound question is whether we are finally ready to receive such proof with the maturity and wisdom that cosmic citizenship requires. The universe may be waiting patiently for humanity to demonstrate that it has grown beyond planetary childhood into cosmic adolescence, ready to accept responsibilities that come with knowledge of family among the stars. The dawn that breaks over Vatican City each morning illuminates stones that have absorbed centuries of human prayer, hope, and wonder. In their shadows, secrets may rest that would transform human consciousness from terrestrial isolation to cosmic community. The truth waits, patient as starlight, for the moment when revelation serves rather than threatens the spiritual welfare of the human family that has always been part of something far more magnificent than it ever dared to imagine. If you've journeyed this far through the corridors of possibility and the chambers of ancient mysteries, perhaps you're ready to explore even deeper questions about humanity's place in the infinite cosmos. Consider joining those who seek truth wherever it may lead, who wonder at the vastness of creation, and who understand that the greatest discoveries often hide in plain sight, waiting for minds open enough to perceive them.